Now I know why. You know, Angela, I did have a girl here to bring a cupcake for autumn.
Oh, really?
It's her birthday.
Well, she's in.
I know. She told me when I saw her last.
The April 16th Planning Board meeting will please come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doreen, will you please call the roll?
Rick Meinking,
Here.
Roger Bailey,
Here.
James Siebert,
Here.
Rachel Henriksen,
Here.
Noah Furlot,
Here.
and Bennett Flanders.
Here.
Jen Ladd is not here. In the absence of Jen, Noah will be a voting member. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, March 18th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Rick Meinking. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Is there any changes, corrections, emendations? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
James Siebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen.
Yes,
And Noah Furlot.
Yes.
thank you. Next item on the agenda, the planning board will conduct a public hearing on a proposal to repeal and replace Chapter 405A floodplain management ordinance. This is required to maintain standing in the National Flood Insurance Program and recognize areas of special flood hazard and flood zones identified by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This is, as I said, subject to a public hearing. I would ask that the town please present. Brian? You-
Yes, hi. For those that don't know me, I'm Brian Longstaff. I'm the zoning administrator here in Scarborough. As the chair just mentioned, this is a public hearing for the repeal and replacement of our current floodplain ordinance so that we can comply with the new standards, the new maps that will become effective on June 20. And we want to maintain our good standing as a national flood insurance program participating community. You want to go through the slides? I'm going to do just a really quick overview of the new maps and the new ordinance. I'm going to run through it quickly because I know you guys have a very heavy agenda. This is just some background. The National Flood Insurance Program created in 1968. We've been a member for some 40 years. We're approaching almost 50 years in the program. Next slide. Flood insurance rate maps are produced by FEMA. They map and display the 1% annual chance areas of town that would experience flooding, 1% annual chance of flooding that would reach or exceed the base flood elevation for that particular zone. Via local ordinance adoption, we administer that program. There's a regulatory side, which we do, and then there's the insurance side that NFIP does. Flood insurance is required for anybody that has a federally backed loan or mortgage. It can be purchased only by those communities that are participating NFIP communities at a reduced rate. Anyone can get it on the open market or the private market, such as Lloyd's of London, which would be pretty expensive. Yep, there we are. We participated since 7/8/75. The last maps were 1985. We're approaching the 50-year mark. The number of policies that we have here in Scarborough is 252. Total coverage 76,806. Claims since 1978 is 135. Total payouts 648,286. That does not include the recent floods of this year. So FEMA is the one that does the science, that develops the maps and determines what the base flood elevations are in various areas of town. And that's what goes into the maps. They use a number of different modeling techniques, as well as aerial photographs and topography and LiDAR and all kinds of technology that goes into it. The purpose of the flood maps is so that the community can make informed decisions, so that homeowners can get their insurance premiums rated by the insurance company. And then there's the regulatory enforcement. That is what we do here in the planning department, that has certain building standards and conditions that they need to meet when they build. Base flood elevation. This is just a nice little illustration to show you what base flood elevation is and how it can fluctuate depending on where you are and the type of terrain and the type of hydrology that's happening in your area. We have a lot of coastal area, obviously, in Scarborough, and a lot of marsh area. We don't have a lot of mountainous or riverine type situations, but we are predominantly the coastal area. BFE, the base flood elevation, is how high floodwater is likely to rise during that 1% annual chance flood event. Flood insurance rate map panels, or firm panels. You'll hear that term a lot, firm panels. You can find them on the FEMA website. We also have them on our website. We've got a page specially created for this map update process. And you can also at any time go on FEMA's Map Service Center and print out a what they call a fermet, which is basically just your area of that entire town. That's all free service and available to the public. Why do maps change? Well, obviously, pretty easy to see in Scarborough. We've had a lot of development since 1975 and 85. Things change, wetlands increase, impervious surface increases, sea level rise is happening. So for all of those reasons, it's important to update maps. Unfortunately, it's very expensive, and FEMA only does it once in a great while. So this is just a snapshot of our existing townwide flood zones. The blue crosshatched areas are what's called an unnumbered A zone. There was no base flood study done for those areas and no base flood elevation determined for those areas. The green crosshatched areas are what we call our AE zones, or our numbered A zones. They do have base flood elevations associated with them. The red areas, the red crosshatched areas, are our velocity zones, which are the coastal zones that are subject to wave action and storm surge. This is what the maps look like that are gonna be effective on June 20. You can see some changes. Some of it looks pretty dramatic, but a lot of it is actually in water, like the velocity zones in the middle of the map there. A lot of that is in water, and you can see a lot of the coastal down at Prouts. A lot of that is actually also in water, but it does extend inland a little further than the current maps. There's also something I'm going to talk about in a minute called the limit of moderate wave action, which is something that's new and associated with these new maps. So the required actions, we got to adopt these maps. They become effective June 20. In order to keep our standing in the National Flood Insurance Program, we've got to be on top of it, have our maps and our ordinance adopted by that date. Affected properties. So currently, in the flood zone, we have 1,749 properties. So with the new maps, we're going to have an additional 679 parcels included into that. We're also going to subtract about 105 parcels. Most of those are in that unnumbered A zone area. Because it was undetermined, they now have better data and they've refined those zones so that some parcels fell out. Pending flood zone, 2,323 parcels. So along with our maps and our ordinance, FEMA sent us what's called a summary of map action. And that summary of map action indicates for those folks that applied for a letter of map amendment and received one over the last 20 or 25 years, and a letter of map amendment effectively takes their dwelling out of the flood program due to elevation differences or better data than what FEMA had. Some of those LOMAs or letters of map change, we're going to remove about 76 of them. We're going to revalidate a day after June 20, a day after the maps become effective. 34 of those letters of map amendment will be revalidated, meaning that they're still effective. They're just too small to incorporate into the map. They couldn't physically map those changes on the maps. Those will still become effective. The 76 that are going to be removed, we have as a community decided to let those folks know so that they understand that their LOMAs are no longer going to be effective. There really isn't, and there's a number of reasons why they may not be effective. It could be elevation, could be lowest adjacent grade. It could be a number of different factors. FEMA's outlined those factors and we've let them know that they should contact the town for more information. I've received probably about 34 calls so far. So those that are in the floodplain for the first time, if they have a federally secured mortgage, they're going to be contacted by their mortgagee and they'll probably be told they need to get flood insurance. For those that don't have a mortgage and don't intend to do anything with their property, don't intend to make any improvements, probably nothing much will happen. For those that do want to make improvements, they will be subject to what's called substantial improvement. If you do a project to your structure, 50% that costs 50% of the market value of your dwelling alone, then substantial improvement kicks in and you have to make the whole dwelling compliant with the new floodplain regulations. If you're no longer in the floodplain, probably I'm guessing your mortgagee will contact you and say you no longer need flood insurance. But again, that's a bank decision. And banks, by the way, or mortgagees can actually make you get flood insurance whether you're in or not. They have that right. They need to protect the security on that loan. This is what the summary of map action looks like that they sent us. These are the ones that were incorporated. We didn't have any of those because they had already done that. They're already shown in the map. They're reflected in the map. Loam C is not incorporated. Those are the ones that will become effective a day after the maps are effective. They'll be revalidated free of charge. No, it's fine. Those ones that are superseded, those are the ones that will no longer be in effect. And we've let those folks know. These are some of the reasons why your LOMA might have been superseded. The two biggest ones are the lowest adjacent grade. If your lowest adjacent grade is now below the base flood elevation, then obviously your property could be subject to flood damage. or if the revised hydrologic or hydraulic analysis changed, that could also affect your LOMA. We didn't have any loam Cs to be redetermined, and that would be if there was not enough data, or if they didn't know for sure whether they were superseded or to be incorporated. Those would be listed there. We didn't have any. Ordinance changes, state model ordinance. There have been a few changes over the years. Ours was last updated in 2007. We're going to a new vertical datum. There's some new definitions. They've removed the dates on the forms because the forms don't get updated that often. So they just simply took the date out of them, and it would be the latest. It would be the latest revision or version rather of that form. There used to be some language under the VE zone, which is the velocity zone, limiting those enclosures, breakaway enclosures to 300 square feet. That's changed. And accessory structures have changed. That was limited to 500 square feet and $3,000 worth of value, and that's gone. It also requires us to designate a floodplain administrator. I guess that's going to be me for the upcoming couple of years anyway. There's some additional development standards, as you can see. The BFE default. Oh yeah, in those unnumbered A zones where there was no flood study and no base flood elevation determined, it used to be that you'd have to likely engage with an engineer to run a model and come up with a base flood elevation. That was expensive. They're now going to default to 2 feet above the highest adjacent grade to the building, which I think is a great change. Makes it a little simpler for folks. This is that limited moderate wave action. Before, velocity zones were the only areas where you had to put your building on post piers or pilings. That was because wave action was determined to be greater than 3 feet, greater than or equal to 3 feet. They've determined since that time, through experience, that there's been a lot of damage done by waves that are less than 3 feet, but higher than 1.5 feet. And so they call that the limit of moderate wave action. And if you're unlucky enough to be in that zone, you are still in an A zone. It's called a coastal AE, but you have to build to the standards of a velocity zone. And then behind that is the regular AE zone, where you can have a conventional foundation. You just can't have a basement, which is something that's below grade on all 4 sides. This is our timeline moving forward. We're at the 3rd bullet, planning board public hearing. There'll be another town council public hearing on May 1st, then a second reading on May 15th. And that would be when the vote, we hope, will be taken. And that way we'll be in good shape come June 20th. It gives us a little bit of play in case something happens, but that's our timeline. I was asked a few questions by council, and I think they made a recommendation that the planning board talk about this. There's a thing that's called freeboard. Freeboard is a higher standard than the base flood elevation. Nationally, FEMA requires that, or the National Flood Insurance Program requires that you elevate to at least the base flood elevation. In Maine, we have always, or at least as long as I can remember, going back into the 90s, we've always had a 1 foot mandatory freeboard. That means your lowest floor has to be 1 foot above that base flood elevation. Or in the velocity zone, the lowest horizontal structural member has to be 1 foot above that base flood elevation. I was asked whether or not we should adopt a higher standard. There are some communities in Maine, and they're listed here, that have 2 feet and 3 feet of freeboard. The ones in red are the 3 foot freeboard. The ones in green are the 2 foot freeboard. Out of all of the municipalities and townships and whatnot in Maine, and there's a lot of them, these were the only ones that had that higher standard. A lot of them, you'll notice, are in western Maine and in the higher hill country where there's riverine flooding, streams and brooks. places like Denmark and Sweden and Penobscot and so on and so forth. There are some coastal communities that have adopted it. Saco, for example, adopted a 3-foot freeboard. I was asked about my opinion on that. I have no opinion on it. FEMA has dictated, or not FEMA, but the state has mandated a 1-foot freeboard. And I also keep in mind that the flood maps, most base flood elevations are going up anywhere between 3 and 5 feet in town. So there's an automatic elevation increase. On top of that, you add a foot. It's sort of like in the building code. The building code is a minimum standard for a safe and comfortable building. Nothing prevents you from going beyond that. Nothing prevents somebody from elevating their structure beyond 1 foot of freeboard. So that's a decision that you all in the council can make. I'm not weighing in on that. Next slide. Yeah, there's some resources for folks. Those are also on our website. And I think we're ready for questions.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate your expertise on this because it's a complicated situation. This is available for public comment. Folks who want to comment have 3 minutes to make that comment. Please, when you do that, approach the podium, give your name and address. We will alternate between in person and online, assuming we have any folks online. So the first person has jumped up to the podium. Thank you very much. Off you go.
Hi, Karen Shoup, Pine Point Road, Town Council Liaison to the Planning Board. So I thought since I was here, I would speak quickly to the free board request. Specifically, when the FEMA representative came to present to Town Council, I specifically asked her if any of the municipalities had made any amendments beyond what the new ordinance was. And she said the only changes that they had seen from certain municipalities was to raise the freeboard from 1 to 2. So that immediately said us, well, why did these other municipalities decide to raise the freeboard from 1 foot to 2 foot? I don't know why they did that, but I did ask, I was the one asking Brian his opinion, which he does not have an opinion to it. That's why we're looking to you for your opinion to it. I think he did highlight, I think the municipalities and the towns around us who are going higher. I don't know why they're going higher. I don't know if maybe we should think about going higher, if we want to plan for the future, if in, I don't know, 10 years, suddenly the state's going to say, we've been at a 1 foot, freeboard for forever, and now we're going up to 2, and we're revisiting this in 10 years. So I just thought maybe that the planning board could put this as part of their consideration tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online?
No hands raised.
No hands raised. Is there anyone else in the room who would care to make a comment? Hearing none, public comment is over, and I will turn for comment to the planning board. Let's start with Mr. Meinking.
Thank you. I guess really what's before us is the topic of the freeboard. And an ounce of prevention worth a lot to me. And I won't do that. If you want my opinion, I don't really object to making it a 2 foot freeboard. Adding that extra foot seems like, I'm just looking at the weather and the conditions that have happened in a short amount of time, and how they've become intensively more powerful. I just would hope that this is providing a better solution for folks that are involved or that live in these areas. And so I would support.
Thank you. Mr. Beely.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Brian. This would pertain to only new construction, is that correct? Or would it also pertain to, it wouldn't have anything to do with anybody doing any remodeling or anything, would it?
Yeah, as I explained, if you were adding onto your house, your new addition has to meet the standard. So if you increase it to 2 feet freeboard, that's what they're gonna have to meet with their addition. If they do a renovation project, cost of which is 50% or more of the market value of the structure, the whole structure has to come up. Potentially 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, because some structures are already low. So it does pertain to all structures, all buildings.
Okay. I would tend to agree with Rick. It seems to me, I mean, I don't think it's gonna get better. So, I think it's wiser to anticipate the future at the moment and, plan for that. So I would tend to go along with the 2-foot recommendation.
Thank you. James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at it from a standpoint of new building and construction, people are spending a lot of money on new work, renovating these older buildings from, 40, 50, 70 years ago. Looking at our neighboring communities, Saco, Portland, Cape Elizabeth, our direct neighbors, essentially. I also agree. I think 2 feet is warranted here, just from the sake of making it a little bit more stringent from a sustainability standpoint. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Noah?
Yeah, I think all of our eyes are super wide open after the storms over the last couple of months. And, as other folks said, that those storms aren't going to change, that this is going to be continuing. So I agree with the sentiments of what's been said already. 2 feet sounds like a reasonable decision, and I support that.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo my colleagues' comments. I agree. I think 2 feet is a smart move. Climate change is happening. It's upon us and we all see the effects. There's no reason to pretend like it's not going to happen. And I imagine it's just going to help us be better prepared for the future by having a 2-foot freeboard requirement. That's my opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It sounds like it's unanimous because I also think that we need to go to the 2 feet. Not just because of the rising sea level, but if you driving along roads and taking a look at our rivers, we are seeing increasingly rising rivers along Payne Road and the Nonsuch, Red Brook. These rivers and streams are becoming prone to flooding. So assuming that there's only that things are not going to get better, that we are going to see an increase in sea level rise and an increase in flooding. And seeing as FEMA only evidently changes its maps every 10 to 20 years, we need to think 10 to 20 years ahead. And I think that 2 feet is appropriate. I will just on a final note say it's been a while since I had read this ordinance, and I got to the end where it said it was the responsibility of the planning board chair to write the letter telling people that they could not get flood insurance because they didn't meet the standards. I don't recall ever this planning board ever having to do this. I don't want to ever do this. I hope that Scarborough becomes a safer community and a more resilient community in terms of how we are looking at the changing climate that we're faced with. Angela, Brian, do you think you have enough from us?
Yeah, and just so that you know too, one of the counselors asked the question, can you have different split zones where you have a certain freeboard in one area and a different one in another? And as you noticed in that spreadsheet, Damariscotta is the only community in Maine that has done that. And they did that delineation based on saltwater versus freshwater. I'm not sure how easy that would be in Scarborough, since a lot of our water is tidally influenced and brackish. So I'm not really sure that would be what we'd want to do that way. But I think there are other ways to do that if the board thought that that might be a good compromise between elevating in certain areas and maybe not in others. So that can be done. I didn't know that that could be done, but found out that it could be done. So just for your consideration.
Does anybody care to change Go ahead, James.
I don't think it's necessary to consider splitting for the town. As you pointed out, Brian, most of the flood water here is tidally influenced. I think we're so close to the ocean here that I think trying to split the town 1 foot versus 2 foot just puts a lot of undue extra work where it's not really necessarily needed, in my opinion.
Rick?
Just a question, if you're if you're at 2 feet, is the insurance affected if you were at 1 versus 2?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why some communities have chosen to go that extra foot or two. There are some benefits from the insurance side of things, reduction in premiums. Also, if you happen to be a community rating system municipality, it's a program that the NFIP offers where you have to do a lot of stuff to get points, but if you get enough points, you get a reduction in your premium. And that's one of the areas where they'll give you points is for your additional elevation above the base flood.
That's part 2 of why I want to keep it at 2 feet. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see the need for a split system. Anything else you'd like from us? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your expertise here and your advice, even though you're not advising us specifically. You are giving us some valuable information and things to think about. Thank you very much. Item 4.02, April Bailey is requesting an advisory opinion as part of a miscellaneous appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The application is for resumption of the Bailey seafood use following closure of the restaurant in 2023 for repairs. The property is located at 165 Pine Point Road, Assessors Map R68, Lot 6B. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Ms. Bailey is in front of the planning board currently as part of an application process to the Zoning Board of Appeals, or ZBA. That miscellaneous appeal is required to resume a non-conforming use in a residential zoning district where the use was ceased for a year or longer. The zoning ordinance says that that use can be resumed if the applicant gets zoning board approval via miscellaneous appeal. Part of that process that's required under the zoning ordinance is to go to the planning board for an advisory opinion, which will be provided to the ZBA. Staff has minimal comment on the project at this time and will require a planning board site plan approval if the ZBA approves the resumption of the use. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Jim Fisher with Northeast Civil Solutions. Got the honor this evening of representing April Bailey, who is with us, along with Council Jeff Jones. Essentially, Eric, just to explain this very concisely and in the interest of brevity, because I know you do have, Brian mentioned earlier, a lot on your plate. So this is the first, I'll try to keep it short. This is the first of 3 phases for this particular project. As Eric mentioned, the ordinance, the information of which you've got in the second paragraph of your narrative requires us to come before the planning board initially as that advisory opinion to the zoning board. And the zoning board, again, is required to be able to weigh in on any project that is a non-conforming use in a particular zone and that has been inactive as far as that particular use is concerned for more than a year. In this particular case, it has been just more than a year. And what we're looking at is a situation of insurance problems regarding burst water pipes. There was a situation where the restaurant building that you see before you right now experienced some burst pipes. It's actually a couple of years ago. And in conjunction with dealing with that in the insurance, going back and forth and some issues with the insurance company and then the cleanup company that was engaged by the insurer as opposed to the individual, because the insurance company wanted to deal directly with their selection of a company that would go in and clean everything up as opposed to dealing with the property owner, who tends to have a little bit more of an incentive to keep things going. A lot of time dragged on to the point where this seasonal business, making the majority of its business during the summer months, and then closed for much of the majority of the year, didn't have an opportunity to be able to open during that time frame. And Brian specifically called that out correctly. that because of these problems that precluded the restaurant from reopening due to this water damage, extensive water damage, which is now ready to go, we passed more than a year. And because of that, the zoning board of appeals has to weigh in, saying, yes, there is a continuation of use here. And because of that, the planning board has to weigh in initially with the advisory opinion. After the zoning board of appeals ostensibly approves the opening of the continuance there, next month, then we'll be back before this board for also ostensibly next month for a site plan review, because there are some things with this project that need to be done given where its location and what its use is, et cetera. So the board will have much more of an opportunity to be able to weigh in during site plan review than typically this evening. And then I don't want to put Brian on the spot, but if you've got any questions as to why things work that way, et cetera, then Brian, from a zoning board of appeals perspective, may be able to answer that. I should tell you as well that the information that you have in the packets before you is more directed toward zoning board of appeals than the planning board, but it's information that we thought you should have in terms of why we're doing what we're doing, who April is, and what the circumstances were that led up to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is available for public comment. As a reminder, 3 minutes, state your name and address. If anyone has a comment, please approach the podium.
Hi, Karen Shoup, 193 Pine Point Road. I am speaking as a Pine Point Street Road resident this evening now with my comments, not as a town councilor. I have just had multiple conversations with different residents over the years, and so I just kind of wanted to make some clarifications. I was on zoning board before, I was on planning board before. I still do find the little process a little confusing going back and forth. I apologize if some of my comments might be more for the site plan review. I think generally my concerns or questions are just around what exactly the ZBA will be evaluating. It's a little unclear to me because I know that Bailey's had a pending site plan review, what is actually permitted at that property right now and what is not permitted. I know you have a comment about the outdoor seating, and it's unclear if that is actually a permitted use with that property right now, and if the ZBA, if that is part of their considerations. Part of the issues with the outdoor seating is that it is actually in the back of the property and it does abut some residential homes, and they have had some concerns. Those concerns around the removal of all the pine trees. I actually pulled up the aerials before the meeting, and I think maybe that's more of a ZBA thing, but they removed a substantial amount of basically all the pine trees, which was a substantial change to that property in the last couple of years. So I think my questions are, is if, when we're going to the zoning board, can we, is the seating, is that currently, because I know my understanding is it's not on their site plan, so is that actually permitted? The shed is not on their site plan. I believe that is under review. So is the ZBA reviewing that as part of their, I know that they had to replace some of the trees. The neighbors are questioning if these trees actually meet the requirements for what you guys would consider a buffer. The trees aren't growing, I guess. So part of the ZBA's consideration is noise and conformity to the neighborhood. I think noise is an issue. So I think those are the sort of the things that I have. I don't, and again, I'm not sure where we are in the process, and I do understand they come back to you, but I just think it would be helpful for the zoning board to really understand what is actually approved, what is allowed, what's pending, so they really know what they're evaluating. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Do we have anyone online? No hands raised? Public hearing is closed. Before this continues, just let me let folks know that this site does have some history, and that history should be available through the planning department, so that if you have questions about what happened before, for instance, I was on the planning board when there was a question about the pine trees. They had reached the end of their life. And at that point, it was a question of whether they were going to fall down or be cut down. So there was a lot of discussion about some of these things. Other things are brand new. We will see all of them when it comes back to us. So the question of the where the shed might be placed, outdoor seating. Some of that actually is the ZBA, whether there's adequate buffering that would likely come to us as part of the site plan, and we would take a look at it. I think one of the things that we would be taking a look at, and the ZBA may be taking a look at it as well, is the opening between the two rows of trees, appearing to connect the house with the restaurant. That was part of a discussion, I think the last time it came before us. And at the time, as I recall, we were not terribly clear as to why that was needed, but I believe we went along with some access. That now no longer is in effect because they're coming back to us de novo, in effect, in terms of their opening. So I would assume that when they come back to us or when they go to the ZBA, that they address some of those issues. It doesn't hurt to address issues that also would come before us. That in the decision of the ZBA, we also use to inform how we look at things. So Karen, you're right, it's kind of a little closed loop here. It goes from us to them to us. But the more people understand the whole picture of the site and some of its history and what the folks want to do in the future and what they can be and should be required to do, that's going to happen shortly. Anybody else have, I'm sorry, I kind of hijacked that. Go ahead. Those of you who are on the planning board, do you have additional comments? Roger, all right, Rick?
Yeah, I remember when it came before us with the road in between. First of all, I miss eating there, so I'll be a little prejudiced. It was always good food. I'm for letting this go through the process. And I'm sure the ZBA will do their due diligence as we will do ours when a formal site plan is brought to this board. And I think there's some sensitivity with landscaping and the use of outside dining area. So I would kind of read between the lines as you start to put together the site plan. If the ZBA grants this operation to resume. So I do not think that at this juncture, I will stand in the way of this project potentially moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beely?
I would support the appeal to move this forward also. And question to Jim, were you representing them when they were before the planning board before?
My company was, my former company.
Okay.
I was not here.
So you know the history, your
Yes.
company knows the history, and so I would just urge you to, there were a number of different issues that cropped up, and so I think most could be resolved, so hopefully it can move forward. So I would support the appeal.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I concur with my colleagues. I think it's fine to allow their, or provide a recommendation to the zoning board to allow their grandfathered use. As was mentioned, when they come back before us through the planning board process, we can take a look at the other items on the property. Recall the outdoor seating area, proximity to Blue Point Road was a concern just because of how close it was and that concrete pad. So once it goes through the process and comes back before us as the sketch plan and so on, I think that'd be the appropriate time for us to take a deeper dive on it. But as far as allowing them to continue operating as a restaurant, I see no issue with that and have no objection.
Thank you. Noah?
I am comfortable with them moving forward in the process. I'm a neighbor to this business and I know it very, very well. I did want to ask the board a question about some of the materials in here, some of the language here that whether this is relevant or not to this discussion. For example, this is described in these materials as a seasonal business. This is a business that was historically run year round with lesser hours in the winter, but it was not a seasonal business. And likewise, I did want to ask if in the town's comments, they talk about, there's reference of this for 2024. Is whatever happens through this process only effective for 2024, or is this in sort of a permanent process?
So the zoning ordinance actually states that non-conforming uses, if they cease for a year or longer, they must then meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So this would basically only be able to be allowed, used as a residential property. However, the zoning ordinance also states that if a applicant comes before the zoning board of appeals with a miscellaneous appeal to resume that non-conforming use, it can be resumed. So it would be essentially, they wouldn't have to come back again for resumption of the use unless it ceases for a year or longer again. They may have to come back beyond the site plan for any expansion of a non-conforming use if they add another shed or any concrete pads or anything of that nature. But if they don't cease use for a year or longer, again, it would be basically permit the non-conforming use in the R2 zone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Understood.
Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I know it's been around for quite a while as a business, and I have, no objection to staying in the way at this time. I think I look forward to seeing what you guys come back to us with. I expect that, well, I won't speak for the zoning board of appeals, but I anticipate it's will come back most likely. And I hope that you guys can find a way to make this work. So I wish you the best of luck. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I also think it should go forward with a positive recommendation for the business to be able to reopen, assuming that it meets all of the conditions that are in effect now. I think, especially given all of the extraordinary events that happened to the family, and between COVID and the death in the family and the burst pipes, I feel that they certainly were not deliberately delaying, as sometimes has happened in non-conforming uses, but instead, I think, given the long-term business and its reputation, that we owe it to the business and to Scarborough people who enjoy eating there, that they have this opportunity to reopen.
Great.
All right. Got all that, Doreen? Magic words? All right, very good. Thank you.
All set?
All set?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Item 4.03, Leighton Farm LLC requests review and approval of the Fifth Amendment subdivision for Leighton Farm. The amendment consists of removal of a previously shown right-of-way between 50 and 52 Dillon Drive, deeding the land to the abutting lots. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R57, lots 1B43 and 1B44. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the applicant's proposing to amend the existing Leighton Farm subdivision. As was mentioned, it would be to remove the right-of-way shown between these two lots along Dillon Drive. This is proposed as the development team is working with the town on street acceptance in the subdivision. The subdivision plan that's currently approved states that the right-of-way needs to be conveyed to the town. And staff has worked with the applicant to inform them that that either has to be conveyed or the subdivision amended through the planning board process to remove it. The applicant's currently in front of the board with the latter of those two options, which would increase the lot sizes of these two lots marginally, which would still meet the zoning requirements for setbacks, frontage, and the like. A draft motion has been provided for the board's consideration, and with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Maeder. I'm the developer of Layton Farms. When we developed Layton Farms, some of you were on the board. You may remember there was no discussion about that right of way. So right of way was there because I had conversations with the neighboring property, the tower site, and I had visions of putting a road through there to get into that property someday. Well, as I got developed in phase 5, I realized the elevation difference between the two sites. It's not really a very opportunistic method to get on the property. And if there is further development by me or someone else, I suspect they wouldn't have as much objection to the new development if they didn't connect into the middle of this one. So in any event, I don't think that the right of way is necessary. I know that the board never requested it initially. It was put on there because of me. And I don't intend to keep the right of way. I just intend to give those two, the lots are relatively small up there. So we actually had to put a driveway on that right of way to get to lot 44, I think it is. There's actually a driveway on there, on that right of way. So I want to give that part of the property to lot 44 so that their driveway is not on the right of way anymore, but it's actually on their property. And then I want to give 18 feet of the land to lot 43. Now, I know it's confusing to you now because I submitted this drawing to you in error that shows all of the 50-foot right-of-way going to lot 44. My intention here is just to get lot 44, all of the property that they currently are using for their driveway, which is about 30 feet, 32 feet of the right-of-way is going to be granted to 44. 18 feet is going to be granted to 43. So I know it's confusing. I apologize for that. This is my mistake, but I did talk briefly to staff about this. But anyway, I'm here to answer any questions you have because I'm sure there may be a few. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room who would care to comment? Any member of the public online? All right, in that case, public comment is over. I turn this over to the board in no particular order. Roger?
I have no problem with this, and I would suggest just go in and read the draft motion.
It'll move us faster. Any objection to reading the draft? Does anybody have a substantive comment to make, or shall we go to the reading of the draft motion?
Could I offer something?
Certainly.
To Vinnie's point about moving the proposed line that was shown, I think you said 18 feet for one of the lots. The motion as presented would approve the plan that the board has. It sounds like the applicant actually wants to shift that line just slightly. So I would suggest including a condition that those plan sets be provided to the staff. And then that would be the approved plan set. And I can
Have
write
you
that
written
in.
that for me? Yes.
I'm about to, if the board is okay
I will
with that.
read very slowly and you put in the final condition.
Rachel, can I just ask Vinnie a question?
Sure.
Vinnie?
Vinnie, Roger has a question. Could you please go up there?
Just a public information question. How many homes are going to be in there now, developed in that Layton Farms?
There's currently 99.
And how many will be? Will it all be 99?
Actually, we just finished the last one, Roger.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I have a draft motion, Layton Farm, 5th amended subdivision amendment review. I move to approve the project titled Layton Farm subdivision proposed by Layton Farm LLC as depicted in plan sets prepared by Sebago Technics dated 3/22/24 with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the amendment constitutes the 5th amended subdivision of Layton Farm. The proposal is to eliminate a 50-foot right-of-way to be conveyed to the town previously shown on the 4th Amendment plan between lots 43 and 44. The planning board finds the project meets the requirements of the subdivision and zoning ordinances with the following waivers and conditions. Conditions. Prior to the release of the signed subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall, A, formally convey sewer utilities to the Scarborough Sanitary District. B, provide a full plan set to the planning department. C, update the plan sets as discussed in the 4/16 Planning Board meeting. This includes, 1, shift the right-of-way area conveyed to the affected lots. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Beely. Doreen, will you please call for the vote?
Rick Manking,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes,
and Noah Curley.
Yes.
motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. And congratulations on finishing 99 houses there. Item 4.04, Aaron Converse requests site plan review to construct a 110-room hotel at 83 Mussey Road, assesses map R55, lot 17. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the applicant is requesting site plan review of a 110-room hotel on Muzzy Road. The board most recently reviewed the project in October, where it asked for updated lighting plans and provision of the applicant's main DEP permit. The applicants received that main DEP permit at this point, and staff's primary concerns revolve around stormwater, as well as the associated engineering details for the site. So with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Can you hear me now?
Thank you. Please give your name and role.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. This is Steve Calasarinos with Labella Associates, consulting engineer for the applicant West 77 Partners. And also on the call is Aaron Converse with West 77 to answer any additional questions you might have. As Mr. Sanderson explained, this item has been before the board for a while now. The plan has gone through several revisions, several iterations. Originally started as a 126-room hotel and has been reduced to 110 rooms. And due to some site constraints and site limitations, as well as some stormwater design requirements that needed to be met, we have originally, we proposed a write-in only access to the site that has been removed, and we have sole access through an adjoining property that has an existing signalized driveway and intersection on Mussey Road. And that is the property to the due east. And we have, since our last time before the board, received our main DEP permit, which was submitted in our most recent submission. And we have also submitted a waiver request due to the proximity of the driveway into the project site from the intersection of the existing signalized driveway and Mussey Road. We also did recently submit a request for relief from the requirement that a licensed Maine landscape architect sign the landscape plan, as we explained in that request. Town of Scarborough has a requirement that a licensed architect sign the landscape plans. However, Maine statutes does allow a civil engineer or engineer of record to sign landscape plans if they're incidental to the work of the project. We have been trying to seek out a Maine licensed landscape architect. And really what we're running up against is somebody having the time to get it done. So if need be, we will pursue that, but we'd like to ask relief from that requirement. And I think with that, we do have the ability to serve from Portland Water District as well as Scarborough Sanitary District. And I think to date, we recently met with staff a couple of weeks ago and addressed some additional outstanding comments, and believe that we have addressed all the comments from the board as well as staff.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think just lastly, I think the way we left it at the last meeting, what our intent was to come back to the board and hopefully request approval of the site plan. If there were any lingering outstanding minor issues, that the approval be conditioned on final staff approval, but we believe we have satisfied all those requirements.
Thank you. This item is subject to public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room or online who would like to comment? We have a hand raised. Could you please approach the podium? Give your name and address. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Shirley Curry and I live at 91 Muzzy Road. My property abuts this project. And I just have 3 concerns, which I have every time anything happens on Muzzy Road. I'm always very concerned about stormwater or water. I use a well and I'm very concerned about anything that would contaminate the groundwater. My second concern, my other concern is that the town respects the fact that there is a right-of-way at the right of this property. That it's an old right-of-way that's been there for years and years. And I don't want to see anything put on that right-of-way. Because if I ever needed to get to the back of my property to do any development, I'd need some access to it. And other than that, I think it's a rather large project for such a small space, but that's immaterial, I guess. But those are my 2 major concerns, is water and keeping that right-of-way open in case it's needed at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. You have anybody online? Public comment period is over. I'm going to ask Eric to address the issue of the right-of-way because I cannot recall that. I cannot recall it coming up. Is it on the? Is it on the property or is it off the property?
If you'd like, Madam Chair, I could address that.
Certainly.
So I believe the plan we're looking at right now, north is to the left of the sheet. So I believe the right of way, or my understanding is it's an easement. It's an access easement along the adjoining property. I forget the apartment complex name, but the adjoining property to the west. I believe it's 15 foot in width and it extends along that adjoining property from Mussey Road all the way to the back. We are crossing that easement with a stormwater pipe to outfall our stormwater management practice to the adjoining creek. That is part of our permit application with Maine DEP, which has been approved. We do have an easement for that stormwater pipe. And again, that pipe is going to be buried under that 15-foot access easement. It will not impede that access easement in any way, shape, or form. The ground is going to be restored once the pipe goes in, and it's going to look just the way it does today for the most part. So there's not going to be anything that's going to impede access to our property from Mussey Road through that existing 15-foot easement.
Thank you. Did you hear that, ma'am? Is that comforting? Well, we do have Mr. Longstaff here who does check things to make sure that things happen right. All right, now let's turn this over to the board. Why don't we start down the other end and we'll start with Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we've seen this multiple times as the applicant noted. I have a couple of items I'd like to ask the applicant about. Personally, I'm fine with the driveway waiver. One of the items still mentioned on the Haley Ward memo, I don't know if it's been addressed. It doesn't, not that I could see anyway, but maybe it has been. About the stormwater comments regarding the excessively long flow path. I'm a little worried about freezing conditions and having a lot of ice and a long flow path. Do you have any comment on that? Can you address that?
Yeah. Um, so basically, the site design, the site conditions, existing elevations, existing grades that we have to work with kind of necessitate that all the drainage on this site is primarily surface runoff. We don't really have enough elevation to install catch basins or storm sewers to intercept flows intermittently. I believe the area that the Haley Ward memo is referring to is at the start of the driveway into the site. It comes down towards the west, goes around the corner. I'll say the right corner of that throat where the crosswalk is from the sidewalk to go across the parking area out towards Mussey Road, and then continues through the parking area to a curb drop on the west curb line, where it then kind of flow goes through there and into a drainage swale that runs along the west side of the property out towards our stormwater management practice. It's certainly longer than 150 feet. Each jurisdiction is different. I've typically gone upwards of 300 feet without an inlet to intercept stormwater runoff. We have maintained longitudinal grades of at least 0.75%. A lot of places people try and go 0.5%, but quite honestly, you just can't. Nobody's going to be able to pave it that accurately and not have little bird baths along that flow path. We believe 0.75% minimum will allow drainage to continue. The owner is aware of it. The owner is aware that they're going to need to pay attention to winter maintenance operations and, look for icing situations. This is something that they do at all of their sites, just like a lot of other commercial property owners. They're aware that they got to maintain their sites in a safe way. And they've got to pay attention to weather conditions to know when they have to pay special attention. So, we're confident that the drainage is going to flow through there and make its way across the pavement. And we're also confident that the owner is going to be able to maintain the site in a safe manner.
Thank you. Is there a winter maintenance plan that you have developed already or plan to develop?
I don't believe one has been developed, but it can certainly be developed, whether it's for stormwater management facilities or just the site in general. I think the applicant would be more than willing to work with staff to prepare a winter maintenance plan if that was something that was deemed appropriate.
I would just want to make sure we don't have a big, ice slide down the driveway, basically.
Right. And again, it's in the owner's best interest to maintain a safe site. Last thing they want to do is have a lawsuit on their hands because somebody did slip and fall. It doesn't matter what site you're on. There's no way to prevent those kinds of things 100%, but you can certainly use prudent design techniques to make sure at least it's minimized. But we believe we've done that.
Understood. I also just had one question, and again, from the Haley Ward memo, they mentioned that they were unclear as to where the source of power is coming to the property. Can you just clarify that for us?
Yeah, the owner applicant has been working with Central Maine Power to coordinate electrical service to the building, to the property. We do show a transformer located on the eastern property line, just south of the parking lot and sidewalk. What we had originally done previously is just kind of thrown a note on there saying owner to coordinate with Central Maine Power on source and location of power for the project. We have since added a route for power into the site. It's coming. We've thrown a drop off of an existing pole and shown line work on the utility plan for that power run coming in. It's still going to be the same. Central main power is going to dictate where they're going to want that to go. If it differs from what's on our plan, but we have shown that on the plan, and we have shown that we've avoided conflicts with other utilities on our latest submission.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, other than that, I mean, seems pretty complete to me at this point. So that's all that I have, this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Noah?
Hi there. Thanks for being here tonight. I remember last time you all were here in October, and I guess I really only have one comment. This particularly pertains to your request for a variance for the main licensed landscape architect. I was just looking at your landscape plans, and the vast majority of the plan is dominated by invasive non-native species from other countries, and that's not what we're looking for here. And so I guess I'd want to just bring that up. First of all, that the plan, you need to work with the town on appropriate plantings, and that's perhaps representative of needing a licensed landscape architect. I mean, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question while it's fresh in our minds right now, I'll say I support Noah's comments regarding obtaining a stamp from a Maine licensed landscape architect. Just from Noah's comments alone, that I would like to see you pursue that and have that on your drawings to make sure that we don't have any mix-ups with non-native plantings here. With regard to the easement into the neighbor's right-of-way, how deep are these pipes going to be buried? I guess how deep underground? My concern is if the neighbor wants to have access back there through their right of way in the future, that piping or anything buried underneath her right of way should be deep enough to support a vehicle that drives over in the future, or if they have to put in a road or something like that. So can you tell me how deep those pipes are going to be, or?
I think we just.
Yeah, I think we lost the engineer.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, Steve, I'm trying to pull up the plans to give you a depth.
I guess to my point, I just wanted to make sure that with respect to the neighbors here, that if they do want to use that right of way in the future to put in a road or some other form of access to it, that your piping or whatever you're putting underneath their easement can support any kind of level of whatever basic access, physical access that they need to put in there, so that they're not on the hook in case something gets damaged because it was buried too shallow, if that makes sense.
I suggest we move on, and if the other gentleman makes it back on,
Yeah,
then we come back
Yeah,
to it.
let's do that.
I'm sure we could find it someplace in the multitude of documents that we have, but
Yeah.
let's see if we can go directly to the person who's doing it.
Gotcha. I did have one last.
So just a heads up, sorry, Steven's power went out in all of his areas, so that's why he got bumped. He said that we'll have 1 foot of cover and a car can definitely drive back and forth from there.
Okay, great. And then I guess my last comment, this is more for staff, and for you folks as well. On the light fixture specification sheet, thanks for meeting the requirements of 3000 K and 80 CRI. But I would also like you to add, there's an piece of accessory information in the lighting spec sheet that I'd like to see added. That's a house side shield. That's DSX0HS. It's on the accessories page on the second page of the lighting cut sheet. Just make sure all the light fixtures have a house side shield that protects light from going behind the fixture into neighboring properties. Does a better job of containing the light on the property itself rather than having it spill over. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Can I ask a point of clarification for the town?
Sure, go ahead.
So the applicant just said 1 foot depth. I don't know anything about this. The neighbor clearly stated interest in having the potential opportunity to develop the back. And when I think of develop, I think of more than just needing a car weight to drive over it. And so is 1 foot of depth sufficient for large-scale construction trucks if need be. Is that, I don't know anything about
And,
this.
and that would be Angela who would know all about it. Go ahead.
So it looks like it's only a 15-foot easement, so it's not like a roadway, wouldn't be able to go in there, or even probably necessarily a driveway. But if the property owner in the back is looking for, yes, any kind of heavy equipment, that might be problematic, but we can take a look at what, I guess I can't recall what kind of material that pipe's made of, but a foot of cover isn't a whole lot. Oh, is he calling in? Let's try it. But I guess.
He has his hands raised,
haven't
but we
looked
can't
at
see
it in
him.
those terms. I guess I wasn't looking at making sure it was H20 loaded, being able to take on a larger vehicle, but we can certainly look at that.
Angela, could you see if Steve could, there he is. He's back, and by golly, the electricity is out.
Poor guys in the
Is he
dark.
on the phone?
He's in the dark is what he's in. Steve, we have a question, which I think we've got answered, in terms of how deep the pipe was buried in the easement area.
Oh, we can't hear you, Steve.
Steve, we can't hear you. We can see you, sort of, but we cannot hear you. Okay, I think, I, oh, you've got to unmute, Steve. I think we're gonna have to move on. There apparently is a lot of technical problems right now. Roger?
Thank you. I have no problem with the waiver request for the the entrance and right by Muzzy Road. I did want to ask a question regarding the landscaping, because I thought Noah brought up a good point. And I was just kind of curious, is there any way, I'm assuming that they might have trouble getting a licensed landscaper. All right, and if that's the case, is there any way for them to work with staff to make sure their landscape plan includes the approved plantings? And if staff approves of what they see, for this to come back as a consent decree?
I think I advise them to work with the staff on any questions
Yeah.
that have come up. The staff can certainly advise them on the appropriateness and the list of the various plantings that are acceptable.
Yeah.
Our ordinance does not allow us to waive the licensed landscape architect. So the staff can work with them. But we have to have, the town has to have a licensed landscape architect sign off.
So that's an item that cannot be, a request for a waiver cannot.
Right, there cannot be a waiver on that. We don't have the authority to waive it because there are no waivers allowed. On the other hand, the staff can perhaps help them find somebody, a licensed landscape architect, at least give them a list of names of folks who could do the job. But they are going to have to find somebody. The state may have its requirements. We're bound by Scarborough.
I understand. This has been a slog getting this project off the mat, and so that's the only reason I raised that, because if they could abide by what we require for plantings and staff approved of it, but if they can't do it, they can't do it.
No, I was trying to work something out and I couldn't come up with anything, Roger, other than The staff can get them 95% of the way and the other 5% is somebody else signing.
I guess I have a question for Ms. Curry. And can she stay right there and answer that? No, she has. Well, actually, never mind. I won't even ask you the question.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. There's been a lot of comments and quite honestly, I'm uncomfortable with all the unanswered comments that were made by Haley Ward with the submitted material that I've seen. I would feel a lot better if they take another pass at all of those, make the adjustments, get an landscape architect and finish putting the I or the dot on the I. I'd feel a lot more comfortable in saying this is a great project. It's a good project right now, but I want it to be a great project. And in order for that to happen, I think it needs to come back after it's been thoroughly vetted again with their professionals and having the staff, give the staff the opportunity to take a look at what they've come up with. So that's where I'm coming out on this project.
That's about where I am as well. We have seen this quite a few times, and I want to thank the applicant for all of the work that has been done to get it to here. It is not an easy site. There were a fair amount of difficulties in terms of the stormwater, in terms of traffic, in terms of sizing, in terms of access, and in terms of the architecture, and the applicant has stuck with it and stuck with us, and worked through many things, but not quite enough. Because I think sometimes numbers count, I took a look at the Haley Ward and I counted 6 areas where their response was comment still valid, meaning that they didn't have an answer from their comment. They didn't have a response that was acceptable. So I think.
Can I jump in? We provided a comment response to every comment. And maybe you guys haven't seen it.
I've heard excuse me, I've heard a narrative comment on many of them, but I don't see that written, and we don't take narratives on our plans and on our approvals. We don't take verbal narratives, we take written narratives, and we use those to approve. So I think from what I've heard that you are close. I'm going to finish. I think that you are close. I do think you need the licensed landscape architect to write it, to sign off. I think you are almost there. I get reluctant about a draft motion that has so many conditions that they might as well come back again. Here is my ask of the board. If they work with the staff over the next several weeks, 3 weeks, let's say, to get this to the point where the staff is comfortable that the questions have been answered, that we have raised and that Haley Ward has been raised. And the staff calls me and says, can this go on consent? Are you willing to give me the authority to say, yes, this will be a consent item? Knowing that the staff feels that it has gotten there, that the responses are there, and that when the agenda comes out, it would come as a consent. The staff has agreed that they have met what we have asked for, and we don't need to put them through the whole process, just the consent process. If you're not comfortable with that, that's fine with me. I want to be clear. If you want to see them again with talking through all that they've got here and what they've added new, that's fine. If you think that offering the opportunity for consent, if they work with the staff, and the staff is comfortable that they have, the developer has responded to those questions, including, for instance, a winter maintenance plan, a long maintenance plan written out for the long flow area. Are you willing to let me make that decision that it becomes consent? Normally, it's the board's responsibility.
Can I speak for just a quick second?
Uh,
Hear me?
okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. We did resubmit, we had a meeting, a conference call with staff as well as Haley Ward, and I believe the traffic consultant, maybe not, but a couple of weeks ago. And I think these are the comments that the board is referring to, is the comments that were prepared for that discussion. We did subsequently address those comments and resubmit plans as well as a point-by-point response to all of the comments, staff comments, Haley Ward's comments, and the traffic consultant's comments, where we did address, I believe, almost every comment that was made, specifically not with narrative. And the only item that was outstanding, and we acknowledged was outstanding, was that we still couldn't get a commitment on a delivery date for a landscape plan signed by a landscape architect. We have a landscape architect from VHB on board to do that. They just could not deliver a signed plan by this meeting date. But we already have discussed with them to get that done. And that, I believe, is the only item that should be outstanding. We did address all the other items relative to revised calculations, revised drainage area map, a low area at the northwest corner of the site, curbing, drainage inlet, additional paving, things like that. We did submit plans and a response letter for that. So I believe maybe what the board is currently looking at is the set or submission prior to that and not the current one. So I know, again, if the board hasn't seen it.
Excuse me, Eric has given me some information on this that I'd like him to narrate. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I hadn't quite mentioned to the board yet is that we had received the comment response and plans towards the end of last week. I think it was on Thursday or Friday morning. And we did send that out to Haley Ward, but obviously it's been 2 or 3 days, most of those which have been the weekend. So that review is not ready at this point for the board's review.
So yes, you have submitted it, but it has not come to the board and the response has not come from Haley Ward. I believe, I've forgotten where you folks are from, but just so you know, in New England, this last Monday was a holiday. It's Patriots' Day. So Haley Ward would have been closed and the town office is closed on a Friday. Which explains some of the delay. That's not helpful to you. And it's helpful to us to know that you had submitted something that could have done that, taking care of things. And that simply confirms that it's very likely if the staff, after Haley Ward has reviewed the comments and the staff is comfortable that it would end up as a consent item. But if there's material floating out there that we have not seen and responses from the consultant that we have not seen, we would not be doing our job. If we said, hey, we don't care, we're not, it's not gonna make a difference. We trust you. We may like you and we may trust you, but we need to read it. So it needs to come to us.
Sure, and I fully understand, and I didn't want to suggest or even insinuate that we, like you to not do that, your job. We just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we have been working diligently to try and address all outstanding comments. So we're trying not to waste the board's time. And we do appreciate you keeping us on the agenda tonight. So But we do have everything in and, again, we have clarification and direction, final 100% on the landscape architecture. We will get that in. We do have somebody lined up for that. We're trying to get, that deliverable done, but, we believe we've addressed everything else.
All right, thank you very much. So we will see you again, if the staff is comfortable after they've taken a look at the responses from Haley Ward that you have sent in. Somebody will give me a call and I will make a decision as to whether you are going on as part of a consent item, which puts you at the head of the line at the next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope they can do it.
All right, we usually take a break around 8:30. For those of you who like visuals, this is the size of the next application. So I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break now, and then we will be able to go through, we will be able to go through this material. Thank you. And it's 5 minutes from whatever that clock says. We are back in service here. The next item on the agenda, item 4.05, Crossroads Holdings LLC is requesting to amend the Downs Town Center subdivision by adding 2 lots and additional area to existing lots in the development. This would bring the total number of lots in the subdivision to 9 and primarily to serve for development of Lot 8. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R52, Lot 4. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Crossroads is currently in front of the planning board with a proposal for the first amended Downs Town Center subdivision. As was mentioned, the subdivision primarily serves to add Lot 8 for development by an end user. There's also a Lot 9 proposed for a sanitary sewer pump station. Staff's worked with the applicant and has comments on the road design, which is recommended to be worked on with staff prior to any approval or action by the planning board. The applicant's requesting other elements of the plan be discussed tonight with further engineering and design details to be provided to the town. So with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Evening, Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer on behalf of Crossroad Holding LLC. I'm going to share my screen. I have a quick presentation here for the board's pleasure. Great. So this is, again, thanks everyone for having us tonight. As Eric alluded to, this is the Town Center subdivision. It's actually an amendment to the original Town Center subdivision. I say original, the one that was approved about 1.5 years ago now. This is a nice rendering. However, things change daily, so I have no idea if this is really current to exactly right now, but it's a nice visual kind of representation of the Downs Road, which is, if you can see my hand, is kind of cutting, I'll say, top left to bottom right in the plan and Market Street intersection. This is really the hub, right, of the town center. So we're talking about the portion just north of that, which I'll show right on this page right here. So the dark shaded red that is labeled phase 2 is what we're presenting in front of you tonight for an amended subdivision. It's a really kind of irregular shape, and I'll get into that why later. I promise the lots don't necessarily look like that. And you can see the phase 1 is the kind of more orange tones south of this subdivision, which is plan right. So you can see that we're essentially just expanding the subdivision. On this slide, it zooms in more on an engineering plan level. Again, just showing the kind of phase 2 scope relative to the existing Downs Road right along here in Market Street that ties down to Higas Parkway. So Payne Road's on your left-hand side, Higas Parkway's on the south. The blue dashed line is the approved master plan area that was approved, I believe, last year. Was updated as a revision to kind of expand the area, include this. So currently construction is ongoing with Downs Road, Market Street intersection, as well as Cross Street, which is this kind of top bottom connector. It's really east-west. I've turned everyone here from the grid. And some of these lots are also under construction. So there's a lot going out there right now. But so we're proposing the second phase here. This is, yeah, I keep zooming everyone in here a little bit more, but I'm going to get into just the scope of what we're presenting tonight. So really, the reason why we're doing this is to activate Lot 8. Lot 8 is the lot that Intermed, that I'm sure everyone's heard in the news on, will be coming to the Downs. That'll be in front of you on a later planning board agenda for a sketch plan. This subdivision really activates that lot, provides legal frontage to get that lot to be able to be a legal lot. So in addition to that, we're squaring off Lot 3, which was approved. Portion of it was approved during phase 1, and we've been working with the DEP on expanding the lot area to kind of make that more of a square lot. So it had a little jog in it, which is kind of tough to see right here as a gray line. So we're squaring that lot off. And then also, as Eric mentioned, Lot 9 is a proposed pump station. So another pump station on the Downs, and that'll be dedicated to the Scarborough Sanitary District. As far as roadway infrastructure, you can see, again, the phase line is by my hand right here. We're extending the Downs Road north as part of phase 1, phase 2 effort. There's a lot of phases going on here, so I'll try to keep it situated. The Downs Road what we're proposing as part of this phase is going up to just north of the pump station, which is where my hand is. So basically half of the Downs Road that you're looking at right here is what's being proposed as constructed in this phase. This shaded region is really a future phase of the Downs Road. We've provided all the design documents for the roadway infrastructure to get the design, because that was a request from the town to kind of just, let's just have everything designed up to that point so that you can see what the Downs Road will look like as it cuts through up to the roundabout, right? Because this is the roundabout in this location on the left-hand side of the screen, and Costco's just off the page. That phase of Downs Road would actually be constructed concurrent with lots 2 and 3, which again are not in front of you at this time. But these are the larger lot that is planned south as you're looking at it, and lot 3 that I mentioned, the one that we're squaring up. So this one in the middle is intermed. So we're kind of jumping around here. This is lot 3, and then lot 2 is south of the Downs Road on this plan, in between Market Street and Downs Road. So again, just to reiterate, the Downs Road would temporarily, as part of this application, tie into the existing road that's there currently. The improvements in the shaded region would be contingent on a future either occupancy or construction of adjacent lots. Really, that's just to kind of spare out the economical impact of building essentially over 2,000 linear feet of road with just one lot and within the subdivision, if you want to think of it that way. We're trying to spread out the costs a little bit to make this road, and they're still providing access. The road that's there today will still be used as access into and out of the site with public access rights. It's just the actual improvements to it would be during a future adjacent lot construction. So in addition to that, there's a unnamed road, which I know Crossroads is working on the name of right now. I don't have the name quite yet, but this is another, we've been calling it the second cross street. Really, it's just another cross street, essentially at the same interval and cadence from the first one. And that provides kind of the buffer between lot 3 and lot 8 right here. So that would be another public road that's proposed. It's stubbed about 400 feet away from the Downs Road right now. Again, in the future, the intention is those continue eastward, which is kind of creeping towards that, where that harness racing track is located. Regarding sidewalks and multi-purpose paths, so we're providing the same typical section that we provided in the first phase. So that's between, I think, 10 to 12 foot, and it varies just a little bit along the western side, which is planned south if you're looking at it here. Extension of sidewalks up along this lot 2 edge, and on the other side is consistently 8 feet along that edge, as well as it cuts in front of lot 8. Again, that matches what the Downs Road has currently in Town Center Phase 1. We're extending that up there. Right around where the pump station is located is where we're doing another, what we're calling threshold crossing. So if the board remembers, we have a few of these located around. There's one on Market Street as you cross Willowdale, kind of bottom right page here. There's another one near the other pump station in Phase 1. That is, it's basically a patterned crosswalk with pavers, and there's an island to kind of provide traffic calming, as well as just a visual appearance that you're entering a downtown and urban setting. So we're keeping that whole theme consistent as we get this next phase off the ground here. And at that crossing, the sidewalk would go to a 10-foot multipurpose path on the east side. So this is the page, I guess, top of the page on the Downs Road. That would follow the Downs Road design all the way up to the roundabout. So want to get into that second, trying to get away from phases, that future Downs Road construction, that's the shaded area. So as you know, there's an existing pretty wide flat road right there right now. It's about 30 to 32 feet wide. And as part of this construction, we're going to reduce the road impervious area down to 24 feet with a 5-foot esplanade, which is going to act as a drainage swale, and then a 10-foot multipurpose path. That's going to carry all the way through this stretch here between the 2 wetlands. And up and match into the roundabout that was recently constructed. So the roundabout has a 10-foot multipurpose path that goes up to Costco. So basically at this point with this design, we're completing at least a 10-foot multipurpose path from Costco down to Town Center Residential. Varies in different portions of the road as far as which side it's on, but that's completed there. And it, of course, there's other sidewalks as well provided in this project. That's just kind of the main one that we're highlighting here. Regarding this future Downs Road phase, we had a few waivers that were requested from the applicant, and we've been working diligently with the town on trying to work through some of these. So traditionally, we've provided the Downs Road up to all the roadway standards of the town, right? So for instance, the center line, the construction depth, everything has been to town standard. When we're getting into this area that's shaded here between the urban town center and the roundabout, doing and completing a roadway to those minimum grade standards, it's gonna increase the footprint of the roadway. So basically, because of drainage, we need to lift the roadway up a lot. And what that does is that expands the footprint when you're lifting the road up to tie the side slopes in. And we're really between two significant wetlands, and our goal here is not to impact any of those two large wetlands on either side of the road. So what we've come up with to do this is a reclaimed road section where we're gonna take the pavement and they reclaim it and grind it down, compact it, proposing a geotextile layer and then a small 6-inch gravel layer, as well as a 4-inch pavement layer. And what that will do effectively is we're gonna leave the existing profile of the road, gonna lift it up about a foot, and then not include, and request that the minimum center line slope can stay, which is essentially 0. It's basically down to 0%. So it's gonna be a flat road. What we're gonna do is increase the cross slopes to improve drainage, and there's some swales and such, and there's some under drains included to make sure the gravel subbase can be drained. But that's the request where that's coming from. And it's really, if we need to meet the town standard for a center line slope, there's some significant wetland impacts that will need to happen or economically not feasible with just retaining walls lining this entire road, which just can't happen. So there's been some challenges with that, and we thought we've come up with a pretty good solution to work for all parties, and we're certainly working with Angela and her team and Public Works on what that looks like. So that was kind of the portion of the comment response letter that we have to resubmit the plans. We've been going back and forth, I'll say informally, with plans to look at what kind of section that needs to look like. And our next resubmission will have all that detailed out for the board's review as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I know that's a lot, but that's kind of where that stands at this point. And then I started putting the presentation together, and I was like, I should add some colored plans in here. So this is actually included in a sketch plan packet for the Intermed building that's been tabled a few times now. So it's kind of a sneak peek at it. So you can ignore the Intermed site plan. We're not talking about that right now, but what this shows, really what I liked about it is it shows the existing developments that are approved on Town Center Phase 1, which is on the right-hand side of the plan, and just how we're kind of mirroring it across from Market Street, which is right in the middle here. So what I liked about this plan is it just showed kind of the development surrounding it, and what's been approved to date, as well as kind of where it's heading in regards to the blocks and the intersections, and consistent with the master plan approval. As far as utilities go, I mentioned the pump station. We're proposing a similar sized pump station to the one in Innovation District. It'll be publicly owned by the Scarborough Sanitary District, and on a dedicated lot. That's going to be in the center of the page right here. That'll take the flow from this subdivision and kind of portions bigger than it as well. And it'll convey it back to Phase 1. So it's ultimately going to the same spot we planned for because of elevation concerns and depth of utilities. We have another pump station here, which again, it will be coming in front of the board for an advisory opinion as well. There's 16-inch water main is going to be extended from Phase 1, and then it'll turn east down this road for a future connection to Innovation District. And then there's going to be another 8-inch water main, the rest of Downs Road up to the pump station. There'll be underground gas and underground electrical is going to be extended. You can see it's going to be extended through actually lot 3, and it will be an access drive down this road and up to the pump station. At that location, it's going to transfer back above ground and then, overhead, where it will go and match up to the roundabout. So basically everywhere in the town center, and if you remember in the town center Phase 1, we had a very similar transition point by the pump station where it went from overhead along Downs Road to underground. This entire area will be underground electrical, fiber, communication, and then basically where the town center urban part ends and we get into that section between the roundabout and town center, that's where it's going to transition back to overhead power. Other than that, there's no other utilities in that roadway section between the roundabout and town center. So that road can kind of just remain and not have hopefully any reason to impact or further cut the road open. Grading and drainage, this kind of goes to why it's kind of looks a little funky when you highlight the disturbed area limit. So we're proposing storm trees within the roadway, which are a relatively newly accepted LID measure from the main DEP. So we're excited to be able to use that and meet the town's goals of low impact development as far as working concurrent with the MS4 permit and all those good things. So we're excited to be able to kind of incorporate that into the downs here. We've been doing some rather large facilities, which have their own benefits, but we're excited to kind of get into the low impact development a little bit more too, which is going to treat the flow off the roadway and then they'll be involved in some other lots around this area. They're going to be conveyed to a detention pond located between the lot 8, which is the intermed lot, and the pump station. That detention pond will kind of attenuate the flow and it'll slowly release it down back eventually where it goes, which is south into Willowdale Stream. So it's actually a tributary off Willowdale Stream. This line work right here is actually a pretty deep channel, a ditch that we're proposing. It's actually temporary. So what we're doing is we're constructing this ditch to be able to activate the subdivision and the lot. In the future, this ditch is going to be converted. Basically, we're just going to place the appropriate size pipes within the ditch and convert it to a closed drainage system so that parking and other things can go above it onto lot 2. So we're not really bifurcating lot 2. It's going to be subsurface at that point. At this point, we don't want to place the closed storm drain system on a lot that hasn't been fully vetted and designed and reviewed yet. So this is the safe way to do it, if you will. We're just ditching it with applicable erosion control and such, but then we have the ability to kind of shift it around later if needed with closed drainage system. So kind of the challenge is we got to get all this flow. We're at the top end of the watershed, if you want to get like that. We got to get all the flow down to Willowdale Brook, and getting there is kind of the problem when you don't know what's happening in between. So we've come up with temporary ditching it to, one, economically not have to rip up a culvert later, but also be able to activate this law and activate this part of the subdivision. As far as landscaping goes, we're providing consistent street trees with the first phase. We provided those, there were tree grates, I think. There were 4x4 tree grates along with the sidewalks and the buffer zone. We're providing those all the way up Downs Road as well, consistent with what we've done in the first phase. And a few application updates. I won't mention the Downs Road North design anymore, but I'm happy to discuss that. I just wanted to reiterate that that portion of the road isn't necessarily going to be constructed with this. It's just designed and shown, and it'll be tied to different lots in the subdivision. There was a comment in the town letter I do want to address with the buffer zone along the sidewalk. And below is a snippet of the master plan, which I think was actually included in the comments too. That was this is the master plan cross section, and you can see it's got basically on the edge there, it's got a 6-foot buffer zone and 6-foot sidewalk. And we're still providing the buffer zone. The sidewalk we've counted with is from curb to edge of sidewalk, basically edge of right of way. Essentially, it's just off the right of way. The buffer zone is really intended to be a door opening zone, somewhere for you to get out of the car, get out of your vehicle, and immediately get onto the sidewalk, and also a place for benches and such like that. So it's not necessarily an esplanade. So we don't have a formal esplanade in this section, but we're providing the buffer zone because of the width we're providing for these sidewalks. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that. That was our intention and understanding of what the buffer zone would be. It's more of just whether it's landscaped or whether it's paved. We feel like it's more appropriate to be paved so that on-street parking, you get out of your vehicle, you're not walking across grass, or it'd be snow in the winter to get to the places you're trying to get to. And then I did want to just point out the deed restricted area. So this, and I might have omitted this a little bit in my presentation here, but what borders the Downs Road future phase, if you will, and the intermed lot, which is lot 8, is this kind of in the corner of it is this vernal pool, significant vernal pool. So this has been on the Downs for a while now. We've known about it. We've been protecting it. So as part of our Army Corps mitigation permit a few years ago now, I think it was actually might have been in 2020, we provided mitigation for some of the wetland impacts we had on this site. And part of that mitigation was deed restricting this area. So I just wanted to point out that the black dash line is a deed restricted area. That's our mitigation area. The red is the actual vernal pool. So you can see we're providing a pretty significant buffer up to some areas is almost 300 feet from the vernal pool already. And I just wanted to kind of, I'm not sure how much this has been discussed in the past with the Downs. So I just, now that we're kind of creeping towards that buffer and again, towards that conservation limit, I just wanted to point out that the vernal pool is much smaller. It's not the actual where the conservation line starts. This was again, just worked out with the Army Corps at the time to kind of follow in a regular shape. And what it really does is it follows kind of natural features. So like there's an existing road down Downs Road on this side, which again, we're not really reviewing as part of this application, but that's why it kind of cuts off straight because it's almost a natural habitat. It's a good line to draw rather than just a 100-foot buffer line or something like that. So I just wanted to kind of point out that this is the reason for the conservation easement and where the actual vernal pool in red, where those actual limits are. So, and again, that kind of sets everything where that sets lot A, that sets our detention pond, that sets the roadway and all that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out for the board's information. I do want to wrap up. We have, our Army Corps permit, there's a small amount of wetland impact for that ditching that I described. There's an existing, man-made ditch that was dug probably in the 70s that conveys flow now, and we're essentially just relocating that ditch. That's the only wetland impact proposed as part of this project. And we're waiting on our main DEP permit. We submitted it in October, so we were expecting that in the next month. We basically addressed all the comments, just kind of in the DEP's court at this point. So, thank you for letting me show you this exciting next phase of the Downs. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. This is an item available for public comment. Is there anybody in the room who would like to comment? Or is there anyone online? All right, no hands up. Public comment is over. I'm going to turn this over to the board. James, would you like to start? Even if you wouldn't like to start, will you start?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess a couple questions I have. Drew, can you highlight for me the portion of the area or describe me a little bit better the length of road that you're requesting the waiver for not using the aggregate subbase?
Yeah, that's the shaded area right here. It's about, top of my head, I think it's about 1,000 feet.
Okay.
From this location right here by my hand, if you can see that, to
Yep.
where we connect to the roundabout.
Okay. I guess the my concern here is that the aggregate subbase is there for when you have like a large combination of water underneath, heavy trucking that's going to be going through there. Is what you're proposing with this reclaim mix and type E gravel? Does I guess I'd like to see or give me an explanation of how comparable are these as far as performances, because I'm afraid of 5-10 years from now, this is going to be the first area that gets those big frost heaves and starts ripping up that road.
Yeah, certainly. So, and I appreciate the comment. I didn't want to do it in the presentation because it's a little technical, but essentially trying to simplify it a little bit, the town roadway standard, I think, is about 28 inches of total pavement and gravel depth that you would have. And that's kind of pretty norm for structural integrity of a road having large truck traffic. And that's kind of the highest. They have different tiers of classifications in that's town's roadway. And that's like the highest, right? So like smaller roads will have less than that. So it's about 28 inches is what we're working with. We're adding about a foot on top of the pavement right now with our proposed design. The pavement itself is probably about 4 or 5 inches, so that's still staying. Essentially, that's going to be a reclaim mix, which is really a pretty good gravel mix at the end of the day. And then we did some test pits below that reclaim mix, and up to about 2 feet below that, it met a type E gravel existing there. So we're just essentially proposing to leave the existing E gravel below grade and add a little bit more above grade. So we actually have well over that 28 inch of gravel and total pavement gravel thickness. We're just kind of modifying what's 6 inches of type A, how much of it's type D and how much of it's type B is really the formal waiver that we're asking for. So, and regarding the water, that was also a concern that Angela and Public Works had brought up. And basically by lifting the road about a foot, we were able, and there's some cross sections that will be submitted to the board also for review. And where we're placing the under drains is we have that 28 inches of depth will have free draining water out of it. So essentially the under drain will act. So what we're going to be able to do is not have water within the gravel section, like standing free water from the wetlands on either side within that 28-inch section that we're proposing. So I hope that makes some sense on how we're doing that. happy to go into more detail too.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Drew. I guess the comments more, because isn't the sub base typically more like crushed stone, crushed rock? Doesn't that pass water a lot easier than gravel, or am I incorrect?
It does. Now, a typical sub base is usually a type D material, which has just larger rock sizes in it. And actually what we've been doing on the downs quite a bit, and what they do, and it's a DOT standard, is they replace the bottom, I think it's 9 inches of D material with E. So E is essentially a type, it's just a finer gravel aggregate. So it's more like a sand. So it still passes water, has no problem with the water. It's just a different gradation when it comes to the rock sizes within it. So it's kind of, and DOT uses this type E material, and we've used it on the downs elsewhere, as because it's a good compact material. It just doesn't quite meet the same gradation of a type D material. So it's very similar, and the free draining aspect of it isn't the issue. It's just a different type of material, and typically you find it typically 15 inches below pavement grade. Well, there'll be a type E, they'll substitute a type E gravel from a type, they'll substitute a type D gravel to a type E gravel.
Okay. Do we have this instance where we're using the reclaim mix and type E gravel anywhere else on the road, or is everywhere else the standard aggregate sub base?
Yeah,
It's
the
not
rest,
standard.
yeah, the rest of the Downs Road, basically everything to the right of my hand is the typical roadway section. We're just proposing it as part of that, that light gray hatched area.
So this will be the only area where this will be different rather than the typical town aggregate sub base.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if I'm 100% sold on it yet, but I'm closer. Thank you.
Roger?
Drew, the curves of reverse alignment,
Mhm.
would that be similar to what we saw earlier at, I think it was Pacer or Forerunner, Front Runner?
Yeah, I think where we actually just, there was that, but I think where we actually discussed it more was the Downs Road in Town Center. There was where, as you come up right past Front Runner, we had proposed a reverse curve with minimal tangent between. And we
Okay.
had a long discussion, at least at the town level, I believe it was in front of the board too, for reducing the tangent between those reverse curves, because it actually provides, you kind of, right, you think about you're going up there and you turn, and then you kind of go tangent for a little bit, then you turn again. And if you shorten that distance, it actually, studies show that it actually helps slow speeds up to a degree. So we're doing that here, and the wiggle that we're asking for is actually right in the middle of this future Downs Road section. And what it does is we have room to be able to slide the road over, basically halfway down where the between these two wetland, the town center and the roundabout area, we were able to slide the road over about 5 or 6 feet. And we're doing that actually intentionally so that, because again, this is a long stretch and we recognize that, long stretch of roadway here. And that's just another tool to try to slow traffic down at that point. And I do want to mention, and I appreciate the comment, Roger, we're proposing 2 culverts across the Downs Road here for wildlife crossing. They're not for drainage purposes at all. They're strictly just wildlife crossing culverts. We'll have to build the road section up and over those culverts, and that'll be to town standard because we're lifting the road in those areas. So we're certainly, that'll also provide some traffic calming because it'll be like a natural, it's not going to be a speed bump per se, but it'll be a natural raise and grade will. And then the combination of that with the reverse curves is hopefully what we're trying to get to is traffic calming.
Okay. I have no further comments.
Thank you, Roger. Rick?
I'm not too, well, there's a lot of unknowns here on the waivers that we'll see again, and I guess this is heading into, certainly I'm getting comfortable with it. But at this juncture, I'm gonna wait until the final submission is made, to take a look at it, but, I see what you're trying to do. I applaud you for coming up with some of these solutions on protecting the wetlands, and I kind of wish Jennifer was here, because she knows a lot more about road construction and those kind of things than I do, and so I kind of look to her to get her comfort level. So I'm gonna anxiously wait the next submission.
Thank you. Noah, no, well, who wants to go? All right, Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Drew, I had a question about the multi-purpose path you were discussing along Downs Road from the roundabout up to the town center. You mentioned that it was gonna be likely crossing the road multiple times. Is that what you were trying to say?
Just one time, and that
Just
will
one
be,
time.
yep, and that'll be, let me get to the plan here and I can show you. So it's currently on this side, so again, plan north of the roundabout, and we're carrying it along that roadway, carrying it on that side all the way down until you get in front of the pump station and the, what we're calling the bypass road entrance, one of the entrances to lot 2 right there, where we cross over, and it not necessarily you have to cross because there's gonna be a sidewalk on the other side as well. It's just that's an opportunity to get people traveling from really the heart of the downtown on that side of Downs Road to get over to the other side.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I thought you mentioned something about different lots maybe impacting where that path might be. I guess it's not a big deal as long as it doesn't.
The wider side, the 10-foot, so it's 12 feet as you get a little closer to the intersection, but it's 10 feet all the way the stretch from basically my hand right here up to here. That's the widest part of the sidewalk is on that side of the road. The other side is the 8-foot section. So there's still opportunities for connections, pedestrian and bicyclists.
Okay, thanks. I was concerned you were trying to cross the path back and forth.
No,
The road's
apologize.
like, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the first of the two, the two first and second waivers you were suggesting. And the third one, I'm just kind of very curious about, and I think you've done some explaining of it tonight, and I'm sure we'll see some more of that. But it does seem to make sense with the gravel. And then I just wasn't sure, looks like the intermed building is being expanded from originally a thought of 40,000 to 60,000 square feet. Is that what I saw?
I'm not sure if it was ever 40. I apologize. It might have been somewhere. Oh, in the traffic comments, you're right. Yeah. So
Okay.
the traffic, yeah, basically how we run into traffic numbers with this, as you know, there's a lot of projections involved in this. When we originally did the Downs traffic study for this area, we had just allocated something that wasn't end user driven or anything. That was basically just us trying to throw a number at it, if you will. And then so the traffic peer reviewers requested that it gets updated to match since we submitted a sketch plan to match the actual, so.
Yeah, okay. I guess the other question I have, maybe this is a bit more of a different discussion, but do you have any insight as to what intentions there might be to develop anything else along the Downs Road between the roundabout and town center? Because there's a lot of wetlands and forested stuff there, and is it mostly meant to just kind of stay as it is, or are you adding a bunch of, I don't know, you can't say exactly what, but.
Yeah, I can't speak for the development team, but what I will say is it'd be very difficult to, I guess, just being on the consulting side, be very difficult to try to permit that level of wetland impact along that roadway there, just given you can see that this hatches the wetlands and it's right up against, basically, we're trying to limit the road section to not impact wetlands. So it'd be very difficult on the permitting side, I will say.
That's kind of what I was wondering, and, I maybe would throw out, when this is all sort of nearing completion, which I'm sure will be several years from now, if we could consider granting some of that land where possible to the Scarborough Land Trust in the end. It'd be good to keep that in mind anyway. I think that's all I have for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Noah?
Hey, thanks. I want to kind of follow in a similar vein of what Bennett was just talking about. Can we start by talking about the vernal pool?
Yep.
So first of all, the hatch line, I understand the map as you described it. The hatch line you said is a conservation easement. Who holds that easement?
It's a restriction easement, so the property is still under Crossroads, but it's a restricted easement that's deeded.
Okay. And in your narrative, you talk about there being up to a 250-foot buffer around the significant vernal pool. And I'm sure you're well aware of what Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife recommends for buffers around the entire vernal pool, not up to, right? And so this, and if I'm looking at that correct, it looks like part of the significant vernal pool has sort of effectively no buffer at all, in that it reaches right to the road. Am I accurate in that?
Yeah, the portion down by the roadway. Yep.
Okay, so I do want to be careful in your narrative to not greenwash too much in that. The buffer ranges from 0, which is completely against all of the recommendations from Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife for a significant vernal pool, to 250, right? So I appreciate the problem that you're trying to resolve. And I also appreciate that you've clearly put in here a 1 2x3 wildlife crossing. Could you just show us where that would be?
Certainly try and do a couple things here at once. Apologize for that. So this is, I had this kind of in case this came up, so I appreciate the question. The red are the proposed wildlife crossings. So we originally started with one which we submitted to the board, and working with the town, we agreed to another one, which is right down in the middle. So the one that was submitted to the board is right here on this kind of closest to the roundabout side. We've added another one near the significant vernal pool, kind of making sense, like, okay, this could be a possible amphibian crossing this area. And then this is not I'll say it's not a dedicated wildlife crossing, but it certainly is one because there's a drainage pipe that connects the drainage path from here to here. So it's primarily used for drainage, but that's what most culverts are. This is kind of unusual to have culverts put in for just wildlife crossings. There's no drainage purposes. They'll be dry unless there's a 100-year storm event and this whole thing fills up. Those will be dry. So that's I just wanted to highlight the kind of different locations we had for those culverts. So.
And that's great. I want to be really clear that I really appreciate you doing that. And I also appreciate that you're doing a more expensive design with it being a flat bottom culvert, which is all the literature shows far more effective for supporting migratory wildlife, even at a greater cost. So that is great. And I think given and I guess one thing, you said that there's a road on the other side of the north side of the significant vernal pool. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, it's actually, you can kind of see it right there. It's not a proposed road. It's just an existing access drive that went down from the paddocks. It's just been there for a while. That's what that is.
And that's going to be a paved road at some point?
It's currently paved right now. It's not, I don't have any details or know what it will be in the future, if it will even be there. I have no idea.
Okay, so it does look like that already crosses through some of that conservation easement through the hatch line there. And so the end result of that, right, is being surrounded by roads. The animals that use these vernal pools are migratory. They're only there for the spring and summer, and they come there from uplands. And so in order to get there, they have to cross the roads and squish, 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 right? No bueno for these little sticky guys. That's just an important context for, as you're talking about these areas. And I think that is a really useful thing to be thinking about, going back to Bennett's comment about, okay, we know we have this resource that we have to protect. How can we alleviate some of the concerns relative to the town in relation to these other properties that are already there next to it and adjacent? Meaning that an isolated significant vernal pool blinks off and stops becoming significant really quickly, but one that's connected to others can maintain for a long period of time. So as you're speaking to the folks that you're representing, I encourage you to think about ways that you can genuinely offer connections to existing habitat through those awesome wildlife corridors that you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I think that's everything for me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Noah. There are a couple of things here that bother me, I guess, and that is what we're seeing with this is a jump from a logical flow of development to all of a sudden a jump to the other side of the town center. In other words, what we've seen so far in all of this development starts never sure whether it's the east or the south, but it starts, from Route 1. And there's a logical development from Route 1 towards the town center with spaces filled in. And that includes the commercial development along Market Street. And now all of a sudden, we have jumped to the other side of Lot 3 of the town center. And to me, we've left out, or we're missing some information that we kind of need to have. So you've talked about, you're showing us the development of the Downs Road. But what I don't see is where the construction trucks are coming from. In other words, we've agreed that the exit on Route 1 is basically residential. The exit on Higas Parkway, which is now Market Street, is commercial and can be industrial and construction. But that exit off of Higas Parkway was supposed to have some bypass facility, and you've shown the dotted lines, but we still don't know if they're going to be there. It's kind of like, well, we're sort of planning on it, but without seeing what's going to go in Lot 3, we have no way of knowing how that bypass or where that bypass is going to be. You've got, I forgot what it was, the 60-foot right-of-way, that's not Pacer, is it? In back, at the other side of the town center?
Oh, Hackamore.
That's Hackamore? Okay,
Sorry, are you talking about, let me try to go a different.
yeah, let's look at you say you, Lot 3,
That one?
no.
Road, sorry.
No, it's the one that you've got a 60-foot right-of-way that you've delineated, and you've used it for parking. It's in the rear of Lot 3. And now you're going to add more to Lot 3. Is that?
Oh, so there was a temporary bypass road we provided on our last town center, which basically just allowed through traffic to go through here. And what it did is it came down, it's actually right on this road right here in front of some sheds, and then you turn down there. And that was just a temporary public access to get from Route 1 to Payne Road. That goes away once the Downs Road and Market Street's constructed. It's just for construction.
But you have the street stubs there on Cross Street and the yet unnamed street along where Intimet is going to be.
Yeah, these are just, and again, this graphic kind of shows they're going to continue and connect to Front Runner, which is the north-south road down in Town Center Residential.
Parallel to the Downs Road.
Correct. Yes, that's Front Runner.
So Front
Pacer's
Runner or
on the
Pacer?
other side. It'd be off this plan would be the other.
Oh,
would be
okay,
Pacer.
so that's Front Runner. So you're not going to build Front Runner through the town center?
Well, it would be, and again, we don't really have the location yet, so I want to preface by saying that, but it's somewhere, within that gap between Pacer and Downs Road. It'll be somewhere in that location. Front Runner right now, if I were to zoom far enough back, would come out right by my hand, somewhere right there.
So why are you showing why are you showing a crossroad there? Go up Cross Street. And you're going to come to a stop, which shows that there is an access road into town center. You're saying that doesn't exist, even though you've got the four corners there. I'm having difficulty, clearly I'm having difficulty with north, south, east, and west.
Yes. Are you talking about an access road through this lot right
Yes,
here?
right there.
Yes, so that will be part of a site plan application. Right now, the only thing we're proposing in it is an electrical main underground. So at some point.
But there is going to be something there, and you are you're proposing in this subdivision application to add to lot 3 on the other side of that road that you don't show us, you just think it's going to come later, an additional part of lot 3 that is part of town center?
Yeah, that's not
That
a right
people
of
are
way.
gonna,
That's not a right of way we're proposing through there. It's just an easement for the central main power to get through there. So the only public right of ways are Downs Road, this unnamed road, and then Cross Street. There's no public roadways so far through lot 3.
but you're showing the potential for that.
We're showing just a utility connection.
That's not what you're showing on here. You're showing a potential. Take a look at what you got there. You're showing a potential for a street. You're showing it actually on the map. I'm looking at C-101. It says a right of way, but you're showing it as though it is a street. Is that accurate or not? I mean, you tell me it's not accurate and then you
It's
just
not
go back
intended-
here and you change this so you don't show it.
Understood. It's intended to just be an easement for utilities. It's not intended to be a street.
Okay, then you need to change that
Understood.
because otherwise you were showing lot 3 as cut in with about 10% of lot 3, let's say north of this,
Yes.
of what was
that's
going to be a
not
street.
the
So
intent.
that made no sense whatsoever. Now we have made sense of that. I'm thrilled. That was one of the questions that I had. The other question as I look at it is going, a question I asked, which is how are the construction trucks going to get to lot 8?
Well, there's a couple different ways we could handle that. They could come down the existing Downs Road. So that's right now how there's a
From the Payne Road exit.
correct. They could also come down, instead of the existing Downs Road in this location, they could go straight through the roundabout and go down that Paddock Road we were just talking about, which is undeveloped, and come around for access to lot 8 from that side. Those would be my two primary guesses at this point, but we're happy to put together a construction, sequencing and management plan to dictate that.
It seems to me if they're going to be coming down, if the construction trucks are going to be coming down roads that are going to be built in the future, we need to see those roads and they actually kind of need to be built, at least one of them needs to be built in order for the trucks to go down there. So why is that not
Well,
on this plan?
I guess, are you referring to the construction trucks that actually construct the site or just like future large trucks?
Well, I'm talking about the construction trucks that are going to build the medical facility.
Yeah, I would anticipate they're coming from Payne Road down either Downs Road, which is there today, or down Paddock Road, which is also there today, prior to any improvements.
So you're going to have big construction trucks coming down an unimproved road.
They do it today with Town Center Phase 1. That's, and like coming in from Market Street. Yeah,
Well, I can see them coming in from Market Street. And that's fine as long as we know where the bypass is, which we don't. We know there's a potential bypass, but we haven't seen actually what the bypass is going to look like. See, we've got the chicken and the egg, the cart and the horse here, and that's what's giving me some anxiety in terms of approving it. You've also talked about not really going past the the pump station in terms of building Downs Road until a little later. The rest of that Downs Road, I think you scheduled for a year after the area was built around lot 8. Or that lot 8 was built out. Or are you going to, when you start with the Downs Road, are you going to finish it at the same time? I mean, is it all going to be done in one fell swoop?
I think what the applicants are attempting to do is leave some flexibility with completing the Downs Road in the hatched portion. So where it would be left off past the pump station would tie into the existing road that you could drive on today. There would always be access through, so we'd always provide access for public, construction vehicles, whoever, from Town Center to Payne Road. That would always be there. It would just be when that actual construction completion of that hatched area, they're trying to tie it to lots 3 and 2, which are the two larger lots that you see on this plan. So those improvements would be separate from activating lot 8.
But Lot 8 is going to be activated first.
Correct.
And you're going to use Paddock Road in addition perhaps to the Downs Road?
Not for public access.
No,
that-
but for the construction access.
I would anticipate that'd be a good construction route to use.
And where actually is that in relationship to the conserved land and to the vernal pool?
It's just kind of faint line right here. This isn't really Paddock Road. This is just like an access road that goes through the paddocks. This is actually what they've been calling Paddock Road, which is on this side. So if you were to go come in from the Payne Road, go straight through the roundabout, that is Paddock Road. And then this is just kind of an access drive that's paved and it led you to the old horse barns.
So you don't have a road. You have, you've got essentially a giant driveway there. Is that Paddock Road going to remain in its configuration, or do you anticipate that's going to change?
Not in this application, it's on the future. I can't speak to it. It's gonna be improved.
There gets the rub again. You're asking us to approve something. When we have questions, the response is, yeah, well, that's the future, and I can't respond to that. Except that I need some assurance where things are going to be in the future before I say, yeah, this is a good idea to put it here, or this is a good idea to do it this way or that way or another way. And yeah, obviously you're coming back to us. There's an indication on the staff comments that a revised submission is required prior to staff recommending action on these waivers in the subdivision amendment. So we're going to see you again. I think we need to see an awful lot of things worked out. I think we need to see this lot in a larger context, so that we have some assurance that what we're saying works for this is also going to work for something else later. In other words, we're looking at small pieces and then another small piece and another small piece. And then all of a sudden, something just doesn't seem to quite work. So I'd like to see a larger picture. I'd like to see some more assurances on the access road, on the bypass, on what you're going to do actually now with lots 3 and lot 8, how you're going to handle construction, how you're going to handle the trucks, and all of the comments that the board has made in terms of the actual construction of the street and the construction of the Downs Road. I guess I need to be a lot more comfortable with where this sits in the bigger picture. Just a second, Roger. Do you understand?
Yeah, I think having an updated overall master plan would help the board, which we can work on and work with the applicant on preparing for the next submission. I think that would, a lot of words, and I think putting it into a rendered plan might help that.
Yeah, especially with directions, what's north, what's south, and all of that. And the roads and where they're gonna be, and to propose new roads if you're gonna have them in there. That would be very helpful. Roger?
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna mention, Rachel, is, I seem to recall when we were talking about the town center, and there was a lot of talk about construction vehicles and things like that. And if I'm not mistaken, you were gonna use the Downs Road out to Payne Road as the main construction access point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think and same with Market Street, and part of that working out the construction traffic is we hold escrow for a future overlay of these roads, so that basically once a lot of the construction's taken care of, the town has funds to do the final overlay of the road.
Because we were concerned, I think at the time, of construction vehicles coming in from Route 1 and, other access points, they were gonna come down down to Downs Road. And that's the last road that's actually gonna be developed, the way I understand it. the main road going through.
Well, Roger, actually, the original thing had Center Street coming through. So we've changed this
No,
consistently.
Right, and
So,
that's when we had
I understand where you're going, but I also, this is, I've looked at all of the plans, and I have a concern that we keep seeing some slippage, we keep seeing some flexibility, and we keep seeing small chunks of what really is a giant project. And I think it is time to take a look at the larger picture, because now we have the roundabout, now we have Paddock Road. Now we have, we're getting closer and closer to innovation and to Center Street. And is all of a sudden Center Street going to be coming in, which would give us a different access to the buildings and any construction in north of the town center, if that's the north direction. So what I've said is for me, I need to see that.
You recall, we also, when they were doing the town center, and they had the apartment complex with the restaurant down below in the corner. They, across the street, which is lot 2. I think you put in we requested some roads, some, alternative roads around the center. The
Yeah,
town center.
the bypass,
Yeah.
which kind of, sort of is there, but my feeling is they've probably changed since on here from what we saw before.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me because.
Yeah. So now, yeah, now I am gonna go on, Roger, because I'm talking about me. I don't think you do, but now I'm talking about me, that I need to see and have some assurance that all dotted lines are getting firmer and firmer, that we're clearer and clearer where the access is, how the construction is going to be handled, what additional connections are going to be made, because we are now getting close to the Innovation District and Center Street, which at one point was supposed to actually be close to where Market Street is now. So for me, that's what I need to see. Do we have any other questions? Okay, we will see you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 4.06, Owen Baxter requests site plan review of a 6,000 square foot commercial building on Cummings Road. The project will involve relocation of the existing single-family home on the site and be for office space for O's main contractor business and an additional rental tenant space. The property is located at 6 Cummings Road, Assessors Map R37, Lot 60. Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Baxter is requesting site plan review for a commercial building along Cummings Road. It would house O's main contractor business as well as an additional tenant space. The project was most recently in front of the board as a sketch plan in October. At that time, the board requested more information on the facade of the building, wetland impacts, and potential impacts of impervious surface area on the surrounding natural resources. The applicants work with staff on these concerns. And we believe they're prepared to speak to those tonight. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And for the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Austin Fagan. I'm here with BH2M Engineers representing Owen Baxter. And with us tonight is also Chris Kofi of Kofi Environmental LLC. He'll be helping us explain some of the function and assessment of the wetlands on site. So as Eric said, this is a proposed contractor business duplex at 6 Cummings Road. The project was last seen by the board in October of 2023 for sketch plan review. We did get a fair amount of comments from the board and have done our best to incorporate those into the design that you have up front of you today. We've had an initial meeting with staff last month to discuss the project. We have reviewed the comments that were provided by town staff, the traffic review engineer, and the third-party review engineer. The traffic review engineer more or less agreed with the traffic study that was completed by VHB for traffic impact fees. And the third-party review engineer has made comment on more or less requirements for permitting through the DEP and the Army Corps, as well as requesting, thank you. No worries, thank you. Requesting some additional information on fill slopes, things of that nature, just requirements for the BMPs that are being reviewed by the DEP currently. At the moment, we are still waiting on information from outside agencies such as Portland Water District. Owen has provided a sprinkler design to the Portland Water District, and we are working to size the main and get approval from their engineers just to make sure that everything works. We are currently working with CMP for some of the fill slopes that you see within the CMP easement on the property. More or less, they've just been waiting for clear ground so we can go out there and meet with them and determine if we have, in fact, have the right to place fill within that area. Additionally, an Army Corps main general permit and a stormwater permit have been, Army Corps main general permit for wetland impacts has been filed, as well as a stormwater permit and a NERPA Tier 1 wetland alteration permit through the DEP. Just to go through the staff comments, I'm not going to get too in-depth in them. I'm sure you've all reviewed this and have your questions, but just to cover some of the glaring topics. Landscaping has been provided by Land Plans, Inc. That has been provided within the submission packet. I did provide the landscape architect with the town's list of approved items, so we may have slipped on one or two, but I know that's been caught if I am correct. In terms of parking area, we understand that there's a need to provide updated turning movements for a fire truck. We provided a 40-foot fire truck. We need a 43. That's relatively straightforward and simple. And additionally, based on our staff meeting, we know that we need to provide a snow management plan for getting rid of snow from the site since it is a relatively tight site. For lighting, a photometric plan has been provided by Visible Light, Inc. They have also provided cut sheets for all structures and poles that will be provided. Along with that, we have provided a breakdown more or less of how lighting will function on the site. Something that I would look to update within that description is just for security purposes and for safe ingress and egress from the property. Owen would like to have the pole mounted lights be motion detected for if somebody does come onto the property at nighttime so they can safely access the site based on the town's requirements of having, a certain amount of foot candles and things of that nature. The architectural plans have been provided by Dirigo Architectural Engineering. I know that more or less the board was looking for a change on the doors at the front of the property where that didn't necessarily meet the zoning ordinance. And we have a few examples of doors that can be used. What you see on this plan isn't necessarily, so the bottom left of that would be the rendering, but we have options that they just can't necessarily add into the plan, which I will cover in a moment. And if you'll bear with me for a second, I'm a first-time computer user up here, so just get this opened up so I can share my screen with you.
I think Angela has to stop.
Oh, thank you. we go. Thank you. So let's see. Okay, so what you see out front of you right now would be the overall site plan, showing location of parking, building, utilities, things of that nature, traffic flows. Then have our existing conditions plan. This plan shows our stormwater facilities, site grading, things of that nature. Lighting plan showing the details for specifications on lighting, general details, and then we get to what I'm speaking about now. So as you see on the cover of the architectural plans, we have a rendering that you would be seeing from Cummings Road. And just to zoom in on the more lifelike image that there is. This is once again not representing the correct garage doors, but I will be presenting that in a moment here. And for your view, I know we had talked about having some sort of, architectural shine, if you will, for the Cummings Road side, and we hope that the gable ends that you see there, rafter tails, things of that nature, will, tie it into the architectural standards that the board's looking for. In terms of garage doors, there were two options that Owen presented me with. This is a more or less carriage house style door that has accents such as handles, other metal accents on the sides, so it doesn't necessarily look as much like a garage door. We understand the board still, wants a certain architectural appeal, so we're trying to make it work for the project, being able to have ingress and egress from the front of the building in order to pull vehicles straight through and still meet the criteria of the board. Additionally, here's a second option that Owen would consider, would be a full glass door. This will give some sort of a more architectural appeal. Realistically, there would be a frosted glass, I would assume, just for security purposes, things of that nature, stop people from seeing inside the building, but another potential option if the board sees fit. Something else that we can bring up, Owen is looking to do solar panels on this building. There's a large amount of roof space. I would like this to be, a functional, as green as possible building. So solar panels on the left-hand side, which would be if you're coming from Payne Road down Cummings Road towards Running Hill. And additionally, here's another rendering just from a different angle to show the building. In terms of natural resources, Chris Copey is here, and I would ask that he come speak to you about the function and assessment of the wetlands, as well as other concerns potentially with natural resources on site. Chris, you got a second? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Copey, Copey Environmental. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. And first wanted to talk about wetlands, and that'll, flow nicely into septic because some of the comments that were brought up about septic were setbacks. So I figured I'd just start talking about the wetlands. So yeah, you can see the NWI map there, and if you, basically the site is, right around, yeah, you could see the site right there. It's kind of small, but yeah, right in there. So there's a lot of development around it. You have Cummings Road, you have all the other development. It's basically adjacent to a big forested wetland. There is some cleared area to the north of that. So overall, there is some development that would impact the functions and values of the wetland. And in terms of the review, whether or not a project requires more intense review by the regulators, it's built into the standards. And what I mean by that is it's either eligible for the tier review process or it's not. If it's not eligible for the tier review process, it requires a full permit. In that case, a function and value assessment's required. IF&W gets notified and they provide comments on the application. In this case, this is not a wetland of special significance. There are certain caveats in the rules that basically outline that. For example, it can't be located in significant wildlife habitat, which it isn't. We did a vernal pool study on the property, and it doesn't have the hydrology to support amphibians. And it's not in any other significant wildlife habitat. It's not in the shoreland zone. It's not within 250 feet of a lake or a great pond. And it's not within a wetland that contains emergent marsh vegetation of at least a half acre. So that was my finding, that it's not a wetland of special significance. So basically it's eligible for the tier review process. So under that process, the DEP doesn't get down and dirty with the functions and values of the wetland, because that outline of a wetland of special significance, those caveats that I just mentioned kind of take care of that question. Okay. So it's basically standard tier 1 level. There's 3 tier levels for wetland permitting with the DEP. Tier 1 is the lowest, 0 to 15,000 square feet. So this is right in the middle. And you know, the properties developed, you know, it appears that, you know, the property, you know, the project's basically being, you know, developed in the same footprint with some wetland impact as a result. But at the end of the day, the project is nestled right next to the existing development, which is Cummings Road. And if there were any functions and values to talk about, you know, you'd have to really go several hundred feet down towards Red Brook, you know, to find any, to find the true values and functions of the wetland. So again, this is nestled right near the development. It seems, in my opinion, that it's limited, and it's a typical standard review by DEP as a tier 1. Okay. And if you have any questions, feel free. I figured I'd just go right into the septic. Some questions were brought up about septic. Yeah.
What's the kind of total area of wetland fill?
8,000.
8,093 square feet.
Thank you.
And I can answer more questions about the wetlands. I figured I'd just dive right into septic. So I did look at some of the staff comments about septic and about a setback. So and this ties into the old question about wetland of special significance. Because it's not a wetland of special significance, it does not have a wetland setback for septic. You would have to have a DEP stream within 75 feet, or again, it would have to be a wetland of special significance, or it'd have to be located in the shoreline zone. Again, a lot of, you know, if it doesn't meet the requirement of a wetland of special significance, it typically doesn't have a setback. So there's no wetland setback, there's no water body setback. So the fill extension can actually go in wetland, according to the state rules, and this is chapter 241. So you know, we are aware that the town has a plumbing code that is more restrictive than the state guidelines. For example, requires 15 inches of suitable soil, 3-foot separation, and since this actually isn't a replacement system, it doesn't qualify as a replacement system. So it's actually being designed for the strictest standards as a first-time system. The reason why is the increase in design flow doesn't qualify as a replacement. You actually have to have less than 10% increase in design flow to meet replacement criteria. So this was designed to meet the strictest standards, which is first-time criteria under the rules. We understand that it doesn't meet all the plumbing code rules, because it only has 12 inches to water table when 15 inches are required. However, we are proposing a Fuji Clean, which is advanced tertiary treatment. And what I mean by that is the town, like if this was just a state, if we weren't in Scarborough and this was a state variance, and there were some standards that weren't met other than soils, the state encourages that the system be designed with tertiary treatment. Now, tertiary treatment is advanced treatment, where what I mean by that is it actually provides more treatment than basic treatment. It actually has aerobic treatment, anaerobic treatment before actually entering the disposal system. And there's actually some advanced treatment systems out there that actually the water that actually is treated through that septic tank aerobically, anaerobically, it is actually rainwater quality in some of these systems. I'm not sure if this one is, but the Fuji Clean, which is what we designed for this to go along with the 4 concrete chambers, is actually advanced tertiary treatment. It's been approved by the state. And it's our opinion that the fact that we're proposing with the Fuji Clean, we have 3-foot separation from the water table, that it's good consideration to be approved at the local level. So that's about it. Any questions?
I guess my question is, have you finished the presentation, or is there anything else that you would like to say?
That covers it for me. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have at this time.
All right, thank you. This is an item that is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public online, I guess?
No.
Nobody is online? Public comment is over. I'm going to turn this over to the board in any particular order they want to go. James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll leave the environmental questions to my colleagues that have better experience than I am. I would like you to show on the light fixture schedule for the cut sheet, similar remarks to previous applicant this evening, specify a house side shield on all of the exterior pole mounted fixtures. That just keeps light from, again, going off the back of the fixture and potentially spilling onto a neighboring property. I know there are IES guidelines and strict lighting guidelines in town to keep that from happening, but the house side shield is just, it's added protection on that. I take no issue with your motion control either. I'd consider maybe dimming down to a certain percentage at night, as low as, like, say 25% during the nighttime. And if there's a motion, you can go up to 100 but make sure you set a timer. Maybe if you are going to do that, have it noted on the drawings. Say there's a 5-minute timer at 100% once some sort of motion is detected. That's why it's just not sitting on all night, being a huge light bomb in the sky. And last, but Scarborough was spelled with 1 U, not 2. It was on your cover sheet of your drawing set.
Good to go. Thanks for catching that.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you. On the landscaping, there's a staff comment about landscaping on the north and south ends of the property. And it says the board may wish to consider. So I think there's enough landscape, enough. That's not an issue for me, okay? Thank you. And the other thing on the overhead doors. I think I would suggest, I'm thinking about different properties in town that have overhead doors facing the main road. And one is a Mercedes dealership. And the other one is right across the street, the renovated fire station. Take a look at how that is.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 I can think of at the moment, but just to get an idea of what we're looking at.
Okay.
Because I think what you showed, well, I thought the glass one looked, with the frosted glass that's better than the other one. The other one looks like something you see on a home.
Yep.
A regular garage, so.
Okay.
And I agree with my colleague here. I'll leave the rest of the stormwater system and the septic system and everything else to those who understand that stuff better. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. And Rick Meinking.
Yeah, generally, I like the architecture. Appreciate the solar panels and your desire to, be as mindful of the environmental impacts that the built environment have. Are you intending on putting some sort of, what's the HVAC system going to be? Are we going to see pipes sticking out with steam coming out in the wintertime? They're gonna be heat pump technology or what?
Yeah, I'll let the applicant speak to that. Thank you.
Hi, Rick, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So we'll be planning on doing heat pumps in the back of the building, so you won't see that.
Okay,
And we'll be doing propane heat for the radiant, so all the piping will be in the back of the building and you won't see any of that.
so you're doing a radiant slab?
Correct.
Any thought of maybe doing water source heat pumps versus a boiler? You're burning fossil fuels with your propane.
I spoke with my plumber. We were looking at the most efficient way of heating the building and
Maybe the
being
most
cost
efficient
effective.
way, or the most economical way to heat it.
Mhm.
Maybe not necessarily the most efficient way, because I can tell you a water source heat pump is very much more efficient than a propane boiler.
I agree with that. The radiant flooring was to keep it heated for being in the shop. And so your heat levels between around 8 feet instead of having heat fans in the ceiling, just blowing hot air and blowing dust around. We were considering just keeping it radiant to make sure if we were to get a vehicle in overnight with snow, it would drip off and it would fall on and it would just, evaporate versus having heated air moving.
I understand, but I'm just saying that maybe there's an alternative to the propane boiler to get your heat sink to be used with a water source heat pump.
Okay.
So maybe
I'll get
just,
more information for you then.
and do you intend on keeping that radiant floor into the office areas and that kind of
No,
environment?
no, so just the shop spaces are gonna be radiant heat and the office spaces will have AC and heat. We'll use our heat pump system in the office spaces.
Okay. Just make sure there's enough clearance and everything with those outdoor units in the back so that you get it, good airflow to those outside units. I don't know if you're gonna do heat pumps or if you're gonna put a variable refrigerant flow system in. Those outdoor units need to have, the ability to pass air through them,
We plan on mounting to the wall on the back of the building
okay?
and we
And
can,
no line sets will be inside
correct.
the skin and not outside?
And we have, in our shop plans through, if you look at the building plans, the office space has approximately 1 foot of clearance between the top of, the height of the drop ceiling to the floor joists. So we'll have enough line sets to be able to run through and,
So you're gonna do ceiling cassettes?
yes,
Gotcha. Okay, no cooking or anything going on, so no ductwork for
no cooking.
exhaust vents, and you'll probably,
Just a small kitchenette with a small refrigerator, small dishwasher, and just a sink, just to wash dishes.
super. Well, I'm trying to get you so that you use maximum KW out of those solar panels,
Yes.
and not use the fossil fuel.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the trend of the state, and that's certainly within our comprehensive plan is to minimize the effects of fossil fuel.
We considered doing electric radiant heat on the slab, but based on solar panel application, we would almost triple our cost.
Oh, yeah, I agreed
and the
there.
amount of amperage that we would, require, so we just threw that out of the picture just because of the
Mhm.
extreme cost.
I just think there might be an alternative to your propane heating system.
One
Oil
concern my plumber had mentioned was if we run oil, we would have to use a pump system to pump it up to the burner and where there's.
Oh, I don't want oil either.
Yeah,
I'm not going
Okay.
there either.
okay,
I wanted to do a water source heat pump.
okay.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
At some point, we need to talk about what a water source heat pump is, because I've got heat pumps and I have no idea. Let's go with Noah.
Hey, I remember when you were here in, was it October?
Yep.
We were talking about the physical spacing of the building relative to the road and the forested wetlands in the back. And I appreciate you've gone through your environmental review and you've spent an enormous amount of time trying to convince us that they're worthless. And I understand your criteria. I get that. It is still a quarter of an acre of wetland. And I guess I just wanted to come back to you and ask you is that, you know, when you left here in October, we asked you to see if there was a way to try to move the building forward.
Yep.
To stay out of that. Can you tell us sort of how you approached that inquiry?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So what we did, in the previous version that you saw, the building was more parallel with Cummings Road. As you can see from the existing conditions plan, if I can get to that, the available open space on the property isn't necessarily parallel with Cummings Road. So what we've done is we have angled the building more with the, I suppose it would be the southeastern property line in order to allow our fill slopes to go, I guess, further out from the northwestern side of the wetland. In terms of reducing footprint, you know, we still need to have our 28 parking spaces based on the size of the building. Still need to have ingress and egress for fire trucks and other safety vehicles, things of that nature. So we are proposing 28 parking spaces, which is, to our understanding, the minimum that we can do. We've done one-way access around the building while still being able to get in and out of those garage doors with larger construction vehicles. And we have used, you know, 2-to-1 slopes where possible in order to mitigate wetland impacts. So more or less what we did to accommodate your request is alter the building, and while still being able to have, you know, between 5 and 8 feet of flat area between the property line and the fill slopes in case anybody ever did need to access it.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. Can you kind of ballpark estimate how that's affected the amount of wetland that needs to be filled? That change, how that differentiated it?
In terms of quantitative, I would say that we are affecting less of the larger wetland complex to the north. What we've done is there's the 2 wetland fingers that within the wetland report are described as more or less row cropping wetlands that are man-made in the past.
Yeah.
So we have impacted more of the past man-made wetlands while avoiding the larger complex within the CMP easement and things of that nature.
Okay.
I would say quantitatively, it's, you know, hundreds of square feet.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. And also, I guess, really want to say, it sounds like you took to heart the conversation and thought about this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
As well as as kind of Rick noted, the solar panels. It's great. It's a modern thing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you anticipate, maybe the applicant speak this better, needing all 28 parking spaces? I guess you don't know what the tenant might be doing, but I'm just thinking, I know that's maybe the minimum required for a building of this size, but in the past, it might be possible to reduce a couple of parking spaces if they're not needed for your building,
Yeah.
and which could reduce your, you know, impervious area. Have you considered that at all? Do you have any ideas about that?
Absolutely. During the staff meeting, I know that was a topic that was brought up, and Owen, you can correct me if I was wrong, or if I am wrong, but I believe that we said the building could work with 20 parking spaces potentially. You know, of this, we have, I think, it would likely be the area where the electric vehicle ready and compliant areas are. So as you're entering the site, the first one's on the right-hand side. Adjacent to the right of that would be the wetland, the soil filter, and adjacent to that, the wetland. So if we were able to remove some of those parking spaces, we could move the soil filter in, and that would also reduce our wetland impacts by, you know, I would say over multiple hundred square feet for the property.
I wouldn't necessarily suggest removing the EV ready spaces entirely. I would just, if you're going to do that, I was just moving them to
Absolutely.
somewhere else, because, you know, we certainly have an EV ordinance, and
Yes.
you probably realize that's probably the future where we're going anyway.
Yep.
Okay. Additionally, I would say that I'm more in favor, in agreement with, I guess was it Roger, with the frosted glass garage doors. I think that's a little bit better look, in my opinion.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I appreciate the work you guys have done to, you know, work on reducing your wetland impact, and look forward to seeing what you got for us when you come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just have I guess, a few wind-up details. Yeah, the frosty glass, looks better. The one that looked like a carriage door actually looks like what you see in a residential subdivision. As I look on the arrangement of parking and the traffic flow, I think I know what you've done, but I would like to have it confirmed. And that is, all of a sudden you go from the slanted lots, the slanted parking spaces, slanted in one direction to slanted in the other direction to slanted in back to the first direction. Are you going to use those back spaces to back in?
Correct.
Okay.
So the intent of that is, so we are allowed up to, I believe, 4 overnight parking spaces. And those would be utility trailers that Owen uses for his business. So the idea would be the availability to pull through. And it is one-way circulation other than the front of the building, and that's just to allow access to those front doors. So you would drive, counterclockwise and then back into those spots. Well, the other, on the left-hand side of the building, you have your handicap accessible spaces, which you would drive right into. And likewise, on the northern side of the property, right-hand turn into those and typical angled parking.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that the garage is, are people planning, are you gonna set those up so people pull all the way through in one side and out the other?
Yes,
I-
that is the intent.
Is there gonna be parking in there at night?
Yes, so for any additional vehicles outside of what is allowed, those can be parked within the building.
Okay. There, as I recall, there was a house on the lot.
Correct.
What is gonna happen to that now?
The original intent was to have that building picked up and moved to another lot so that it can be reused. I'm not sure in the happenings of that, but Owen, do you?
I guess my question, whether you're gonna pick it up or and move it or destroy it. One of the things that I would certainly want to make sure is that no wetlands are impacted by that effort. I'm not clear where that building is.
Or you can.
So the demolition work or the moving work is going to be done very carefully. So it'd be helpful for us to know how you're going to accomplish that to make sure that there are no real negative impacts on the wetlands you've got there.
Okay. Yeah, as you can see on the existing conditions plan, and thank you, Owen. On the existing conditions plan, there is an existing driveway off of Cummings Road, and it is perpendicular to the road. So I would imagine that vehicles are going to come in directly off of there and back out onto Cummings Road. Additionally, that is within the upland portion, and there's a fair amount of grass area around the building. So I wouldn't imagine that wetland impacts will be a concern with, lifting this up, whether it be by crane or whatever methods they do that by.
Is there a cellar, a basement?
Yes.
What's going to happen to that?
I believe that would be demolished and caved in on itself and everything taken offsite to a refuse disposal facility.
And then the space filled in
Yes.
using what?
We can spec backfill material for that if you'd like. I know we do spec material for the parking area. It could be something of that, a granular E, and we can spec that on the plan so that that's apparent.
Yeah, that would be helpful so that just in case it's going to have any impact on the water flow or absorption.
Absolutely.
Let me see. I think that was about what I had. I'm going to depend upon the staff to take a look at the septic system and any concerns that they may have as residual concerns around the septic. You did a good job of selling it to us, but I trust the the staff to know more about the sales job than I do.
Absolutely. Thank you for the compliment.
All right, do you have any questions for us?
I do not, other than the process moving forward. I assume we can resubmit to the board with our comment response and I guess a solid plan of what doors and a picture for the board to see the architectural plans.
Yeah,
And is there anything else the board would?
And well, responses to any of the questions that were raised here, and you've given us responses verbally.
Yep.
Let's get them in the plans.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Staff report.
Not much to report at this time. There are 2 certificates of occupancy that are forthcoming in the next week or so between now and the next planning board meeting. Evergreen Credit Union, we've inspected and done the planning board inspection. I think they anticipate to open a little bit later this month, and we should have their performance guarantee in place this week. The same for Next Gen, which is the mixed-use building at 225 Innovation next to IDEX. We have also inspected that and done the planning board inspection, so that should be open shortly. Other than that, in terms of withdrawals and sort of future pipeline projects, the board might recollect that AR Building at 35 Muzzy Road did submit a site plan amendment to move Building 6 to avoid some soil issues, and that also included relocating their driveway. They have officially withdrawn that request and are going to make the approved 2022 approved plan work. So, and we'll, Doreen mentioned to me, we'll take your plans that are in your bags for that and file the appropriate copies and recycle the rest. So that will no longer be in front of the board at this point.
Hey, Eric, can I have a question?
Sure.
Was that the one where they said they couldn't build a building where they originally thought they could and they were
Yes.
going to do green space?
Yep,
So now they're not going to do the green space. They're just going to put the old building back in.
correct.
That's a bummer. But cool, thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, I've asked Eric to close the loop on projects that have been kind of hanging fire, that we all of a sudden disappear from our view. Or we might expect to come back and it turns out that they're not going to do that. So if you have saved material on your dining room table from a project like this one, the AR, you know you can now drop it back in the bag and Doreen will appropriately dispose of it. Which is going to free up an awful lot of space on my dining room table. Minor development reviews, Eric?
None at this time.
Administrative amendment report,
None at this time.
correspondence,
None.
planning board comments. Yes,
Sorry to ask you again, similar vein as the previous. Have we heard anything about when Beechers Motor Speedway location is going to come back? Scammell, I think, properties?
Yep, so that project, the end user actually ended up going with a different development team, so it's no longer Scannell. But it's another team that they work with quite frequently. And we've met with them several times. I believe they are planning to submit, I think the submittal deadline for the May meeting is Monday. So we anticipate they'll submit on Monday for the May 20th planning board meeting for a site plan.
Is the one with Joe still inactive?
They are still working through their DOT permitting for traffic movement permit.
this is the one on Bridge,
On
Payne and
Bridges
Bridge,
Drive.
Bridges, okay.
Yeah, as you can imagine, a copy shop of that kind of, even though it's a small one, when you're dealing with a drive-through, it generates a lot of traffic.
Yeah, it
So, it's a little more complicated when you do sort of like a Starbucks or a Roma Joe's or a Dunkin' Donuts. So it's taking a little longer to get through DOT.
Okay.
Since we're in that same area, any progress being made on the said EV chargers that were promised at the Costco development?
Not at this time. We do have a performance guarantee in place for those, as part of their CO, but we have not heard from them.
How long does that performance guarantee last?
Typically, the agreements last for a year, at which point the town can,
Keep the money?
Yeah, essentially keep the money, but, we typically like to work with, applicants and make good faith efforts to have them complete the work, so.
I agree that pathway is nice, but if we have to take their money, maybe it can go to the sustainability committees.
Well, I think it's a
budget.
performance guarantee to put it on their site to follow the site plan. So if we took it, it means that Public Works would be trying to install it, which is never a good thing on a private site.
Mm.
So it's really a performance guarantee is in place so that we have the mechanism to do it for them if they don't. So
It's
not,
ju-
a-
it's
it's
just
not
a
a good
shame.
path, right?
It's just too bad. Thank you.
Excuse me, other comments?
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? How does that work from a logistical standpoint? I mean, do you communicate with Costco or yeah, how does that work? That they opened in November, so November is 12 months.
So yeah, with the CO is when the performance guarantee for anything outstanding, that's really not a life safety issue. A lot of times it's growing grass or even surface paving at times. And so that would have been something that Eric probably put through with the performance guarantee. That usually is, we like to keep that in a kind of high enough number where it's important for someone to want it back, right? So that's our goal as staff, is to make sure we capture everything so that they have some motivation to want to get that money back. And so typically, yes, our finance department doesn't like those hanging out for very long. And so every once in a while, they will kind of tag Eric and I about, is this still this project? Have they completed it? Have they not? We're holding on to this performance guarantee. And so it kind of prompts us to maybe poke a little bit and saying, we have, this money still hanging out. You still have items to do. I will say our staff is so busy that probably a lot of times we don't poke. We're waiting, like sometimes gets lost, but that's where I think the finance department at least will give us that prompting, because they really want to clear it off their books for any audits, because it is part of that process for the town.
Thank you.
Yeah, Roger?
Yeah, is it possible that maybe Costco is holding off on this until they can come back to this board or the appropriate authority and say, we haven't had enough requests, or we have evidence that nobody has requested these, and therefore we want to have these removed?
Well, if it's on the site plan, they'd have to do a site plan amendment, and I would think that is a more just a bigger process than just probably installing them. Like for them to pay somebody to go through new plans and to come fly in technically probably to Scarborough to sit in front of this board to remove it, I would say you're probably better off spending your money just installing them.
Okay.
But
This
Plus,
board was-
plus, I would suggest that they would get a lot of stone faces staring at them if they asked to remove the EV charging stations.
This board was told they were going to put in level 3 chargers. 6, I think, out of 694 parking spots. That would clearly not be approved now that we have an EV ordinance, but
so also as projects like that, if it does get prolonged, if there's anything that they need to do for permitting on the site that comes through code or planning or engineering, it gets flagged for us too, even if it's something minor at the site that has to get any kind of permitting through code. It's something that we can then kind of have that conversation at that time when they're looking for the next anything additional. We can kind of keep that on our radar as well. I haven't heard any indication that they're not willing to do it. Have you? I mean, Eric can speak to that, but I have not heard that.
And by gold they go.
Other comments? Anything else? I have nothing. Motion to adjourn? I can't make it. So you just made a motion to
So-
adjourn and
So moved.
I hear Rick Meinking making a second. All in favor? Aye. Adjourned. Thank you.